Chapter 374. Su Qing-sang's tone was quite sincere. She repeatedly promised that she and Xiang Kaiping would stay away from Lin City. Li Qianxue looked at her expression and knew that she was telling the truth. She stood there without moving and stared at Su Qing-sang with her sharp almond-shaped eyes. What she said made some sense, but only to a certain extent. You said that you weren't willing before. Why are you willing now? Do you think that I will believe you after you say that? How do I know that if I let you go now, you won't turn around and find Hua Jinyao or your father to help you? Auntie, if I want to find them, I can find them now. If I don't want to go to Rome City, I can tell you now. You can find out the truth later. After all, you can find out where I am and whether I am in Lin City or not. Isn't that right? Li Qianxue was silent. In fact, she really didn't like Su Qing-sang. Her existence was like a thorn, reminding her how Su Chenghui became her husband. It constantly reminded her that her man didn't love her, but other women. Closing her eyes, Li Qianxue felt her heart palpitate and her face was a little pale. She was less than 50 years old, but she already liked to reminisce about the past. In her dreams at night, she asked herself over and over again whether she would make the same choice if she could start over again. Unfortunately, there was no answer because time could never be repeated. She didn't speak, and Su Qing-sang didn't know what she meant. Was she going to let it go like this? In fact, if Li Qianxue really wanted to hit her today, she wouldn't be surprised. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qing-sang. She hated Su Qing-sang as much as she loved Su Chenghui. But no matter how much she hated Su Qing-sang, she had to admit, for more than 20 years, they had neglected her, but they didn't let her go astray. Not only did she not go astray, professional aside, Li Qianxue was even willing to admit that Su Qing-sang was excellent. Although in her heart, there was still a gap between such excellence and her own daughter. After all, Su Peijian had been in the company for a long time and helped her deal with business. There was some silence in the office. Su Qing-sang looked at the time. She seemed to have a meeting in the department. Junior sister? There was a knock on the door. Zhuo Hongshan's voice came from outside. Su Qing-sang paused for a moment and smiled at Li Qianxue. Auntie, I'll open the door. Li Qianxue stood still, and Su Qing-sang ran to open the door. Outside the door, Li Qianxue's assistant still wanted to stop Zhuo Hongshan. It was also because there was an assistant standing there that Zhuo Hongshan, who was originally just passing by, was allowed to come in to take a look. Junior Marshal's sister, are you okay? Zhuo Hongshan looked at the assistant, then at Li Qianxue. He felt that Li Qianxue looked familiar, but he couldn't remember who she was. Your mistress was son? Li Qianxue recognized Zhuo Hongshan immediately. Mr. Zhuo and old Master Li were close friends, and they got along well. When they were free, they would go fishing or play chess together. Yes, Zhuo Hongshan recognized Li Qianxue. So it's Annie Li. Hello, Annie Li. I didn't expect you to be so big already. Li Qianxue looked at him and then at Su Qing-sang. Zhuo Hongshan called Su Qing-sang Junior Marshal's sister. Zhuo Hongshan recognized Li Qianxue and knew who she was. He then looked at Su Qing-sang. Even if he was worried that she would be taken advantage of, he couldn't say it out loud. Junior Marshal's sister? Didn't you say you had something for me? Something? Su Qing-sang was stunned for a moment, then suddenly nodded. Yes. Wait a moment. Su Qing-sang bought a lot of gifts when she went to Japan. Other than for the people in the department, she also gave a gift to Zhuo Hongshan. She turned to her desk, opened the drawer, and took out a beautifully wrapped box. Senior Marshal brother, here. I went to Japan a few days ago, and this is a small gift. I hope you don't mind. Why would I mind if it's a gift from you? Zhuo Hongshan took the box from her hand. Even though he knew that Su Qing-sang only treated him as a classmate, he was still happy and excited. Thank you. You're too kind. Su Qing-sang smiled. Did you come here to get bracelet? Of course not. Zhuo Hongshan thought about the notice from the hospital. I have something else to tell you. What is it? As you know, we have a collaboration with Song City's Central Hospital. They will be conducting some medical research during this period, including topics that you're interested in. I have already recommended you to the hospital. You can go to Song City as an exchange doctor. Really? Su Qing-sang was suddenly excited. When will you be going? How long will you be gone? About half a month. Zhuo Hongcheng glanced at Su Qing-sang as he spoke. Don't rush to decide. After all, you have to know that it will be almost the new year when you come back. Su Qing-sang was stunned. She suddenly remembered that she was married. She should have told Wu Jinyao first before going to Song City. Okay, I got it. Think about it. If there are no problems, submit your name tomorrow. Ultimately, it depends on your own will. Okay, thank you. Senior Marshal Brother, you don't have to be so polite with me. Zhuo Hongcheng raised the box in his hand as he spoke. Speaking of which, I should thank you. After he finished speaking, he looked at Li Qianxue, who was still standing at the side. Auntie Li still has something to tell you, right? Then I'll leave first. M.H.M. Su Qing-sang nodded, but she was secretly relieved. She had observed Li Qianxue for the past few years and found that she cared about her reputation. She probably wouldn't act like she had just now. Zhuo Hongcheng left, and the assistant closed the door again. Now it was just the two of them again. Su Qing-sang sighed in her heart. When she met Li Qianxue's sharp gaze, she really felt that she couldn't stand it anymore. Auntie, don't you have to work today? Li Qianxue glanced at Su Qing-sang coldly, feeling inexplicably annoyed and disgusted. Don't you still have your father in the company? Don't worry, it's just one day away. The Li Corporation won't collapse. Su Qing-sang couldn't respond to this, but she knew that Li Qianxue was obviously still angry. Su Qing-sang sighed in her heart and spoke again. Auntie, I promise that I will bring my mother back to Rong City with Wu Jinyao as soon as possible. Back to Rong City? Li Qianxue snorted coldly. Your senior marshal brother just said that he wants you to go on an exchange program. What? You don't want such an opportunity? Su Qing-sang was speechless for a moment. She suddenly found that she didn't know how to respond to Li Qianxue's provocation. She wasn't that afraid of Su Qinghui, but she was afraid of Li Qianxue. She was always a little afraid of her. Chapter 375. Even so, Su Qing-sang still tried to persuade her. You heard it. It would only take half a month. It just so happens that it's time for the new year. We'll leave at that time. Li Qianxue had already planned to leave. She was indeed a little impulsive today. In fact, she shouldn't have come here to find Su Qing-sang at all. She shouldn't have come here to do such a disgraceful thing. But now, looking at Su Qing-sang's expression, she felt inexplicably annoyed. Look, you said that you would leave immediately, but now you want to wait for another half a month? Does that mean that after half a month, you can say that you will stay here for the new year? Auntie, I didn't mean that. Then what do you mean? Half a month is enough for your father and that, your mother to rekindle their old love, right? When Li Qianxue said the words rekindled old love, her voice was almost squeezed out from between her teeth. Su Qing-sang trembled at the way she gritted her teeth. Without thinking, she said, Auntie, you think too much. It's impossible for my mom and dad to be together now. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She didn't believe Su Qing-sang at all. Su Qing-sang sighed in her heart. She found that she had sighed more often today than she had in the past year. Auntie, I know you don't believe me, and it's hard for you to believe me. I also know that you don't like my mom. It's hard to believe that my mom came back with no ulterior motives. But I still have to tell you that it's really impossible for my dad and mom to be together. You're not your mother. How can you make a promise for your mother? Li Qianxue couldn't help but want to refute her. It's true that I'm not my mother, but I can vouch for her. Because my mother is not only my father's past, she is also a mother. Su Qing-sang had been watching from the sidelines for the past few days and had seen through Xiang Saiping's thoughts. No matter how much my mother loves my father, she will never be with him again. Because she recognizes me now, she is still my mother. All these years, she had been alone in Rong City, and she had always thought that I was living a good life. Until she acknowledged me. Until she found out that I was an illegitimate daughter. Until she found out that my father had ignored me for so many years. Annie, I'm not blaming anyone or blaming anyone. In fact, it's my mom who loves me. She doesn't want to be with my dad anymore. She blames my father. She hates him more than enough. How could she be willing to go back with my dad? She can't even forgive my dad. You didn't even want to talk to him. Annie, actually, I don't need to lie to you about these things. I want to tell you that some things really aren't what you think they are. Anyway, believe it or not, it's impossible for my mom and dad to be together. Li Qianxue listened to her without saying a word. Finally, she sneered. Are you saying that you blame my family for not taking good care of you? Is that why your mother hates us? No wonder he tried to make things difficult for Su Peijian. Auntie, Su Qingsang felt a little helpless. Her main point wasn't this at all. I just said, I'm not blaming anyone. In fact, I don't blame anyone. If he wanted to blame something, he could only blame fate. If he wanted to blame something, he could only blame heaven's will. Now that she had grown up, she would not pursue the past. What's more, the wife and mistress were incompatible. She didn't want to get involved in the grudges of her previous life. It's good that there are no monsters. I don't think you have a right to blame me. There were many families with illegitimate daughters in Lin City, but which family would bring an illegitimate daughter into their own family to raise? How many people had secretly laughed at her because of this? How many grievances had she suffered because of Su Changhui? Because of Xiang Kaiping, she had been ignored by Su Changhui her whole life. Under such circumstances, she would be magnanimous if she didn't make things difficult for Su Qingsang. Not to mention that he had to get along well with her and treat her well. That was impossible. Hearing the arrogance in her voice, Su Qingsang nodded and said, Yes. Yes, Auntie. I said it. I don't blame you. But please believe me. My mother neglected me in the past and didn't take good care of me. In the future, she will definitely take good care of me. So wherever I go, she will definitely go with me. As for me, Hu Jinyao is from Rong City. You don't have to worry about me not leaving. She spoke sincerely, and every word she said was reasonable. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qingsang for a long time. She didn't want to stay any longer, but she still said coldly, I'm not worried. I just hope that you will do what you say. In fact, she didn't want Su Qingsang to stay in Lin City and wander around under her nose. Now that she was willing to leave, she couldn't ask for more. Su Qingsang felt a little helpless because of her tone. Why didn't she see it before? Li Qianxue's coldness was so superficial. Then, Annie, I have to go to a meeting. You see, Li Qianxue glared at her. Was she chasing her away? If it weren't for the sake of her daughter, did she think she would be willing to come to this place that smelled of disinfectant? Li Qianxue's expression was a little unfriendly. She turned around and walked out. Su Qingsang realized that her last sentence was not very appropriate, but she had already said it. When she went back to the desk to pick up the folder and notes, she suddenly saw the box on it. After thinking for a moment, she picked it up and handed it to Li Qianxue the moment she opened the door. Auntie, this is a small souvenir I bought in Japan. It's for you. Li Qianxue almost laughed at Su Qingsang's action. She glanced at the box with a bow on it. You bought too much, didn't you? You can't give it out? For me? You want me to not pursue the matter of your mother? Su Qingsang forced herself to calm down and said extremely calmly, How could that be? It was originally for you. Really, I was planning to send it to the old mansion after work. Li Qianxue looked at her draft, which didn't even lie. She sneered and didn't take the box. She glanced at the assistant. The assistant took the box with great sensitivity. Because of this small episode, Li Qianxue, who was about to leave, stopped for a moment. Su Qingsang, don't be petty in front of me. You will know that it was a mistake. How could I? Su Qingsang blinked and looked extremely sincere. I really gave it to you with sincerity. Even if it wasn't, it could only be after what she did just now. Li Qianxue didn't pay any more attention to her. She stepped on her high heels and left with a cold face. After she left, Su Qingsang stuck out her tongue. It was really tiring to deal with someone like Li Qianxue. However, she really had to think about it carefully. There was still nearly a month before the new year. She would go to Song City for an exchange for half a month. When she came back, she would pack up and settle things. Then, she would go to Rong City. Chapter 376. On the other end, Li Qianxue arrived at the company late. The regular meeting had already ended. She, the vice president, wasn't there. Su Qinghui had handled these matters very well. Su Peijian called and said that she would have lunch with her at noon. Li Qianxue hung up and asked the assistant to book a table. It was Su Peijian's favorite restaurant. When the assistant entered the door, he brought the box in. After finishing what Li Qianxue had asked, he put the box on the desk. Presently, this throw it away, Li Qianxue said without looking up as if she had just seen it. Her voice was too cold, and her tone was too firm. The assistant looked at the box and felt a little pity. However, he still picked it up. Then, I'll throw it away. Throw it away. Remember to throw it far away. The assistant nodded and left with the box. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian sitting in front of her. The wounds on her face were barely visible after being treated yesterday. Su Peijian majored in business administration. She was also involved in the recent cooperation with Tianya Group. Mom, weren't you at the meeting this morning? Where did you go? You didn't even answer my calls. Su Peijian asked casually, but Li Qianxue's reaction stunned her. Mom, what's wrong? Nothing. Don't you have your dad? Don't mention it. Su Peijian was actually a little dissatisfied with Su Chenghui, but only a little. There was nothing that she couldn't say to her mother. I asked my dad to vent his anger on that woman, but he refused. I'm actually very angry. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian and frowned because of her words. Oh, your father actually refused to do it? Yes. Not only did he refuse, but he also told me that there was no need to settle the score with him now. He also said that we are now working with the Hua family. It would be bad if we offend Hua Jinyao. So what if it's Hua Jinyao? Thinking of this, Su Peijian felt a little annoyed. He's just from Rong City. He's famous. Why should we be afraid of him? Your dad has a point. Li Qianxue didn't continue to cause trouble for Su Qingsang today. Wasn't it because of Hua Jinyao? Mom, why do you say that too? Su Peijian was getting more and more annoyed. He glared at Li Qianxue, his face full of resentment. Peijian. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian. For now, the bigger picture is more important. You should listen to your father first. Su Peijian looked unconvinced. However, thinking of what Su Chenghui had said, she relaxed a little. Forget it. Of course I listened to my dad. My father said that he has already thought of a way to deal with them. Really? Li Qianxue picked up the cup of tea in front of her and took a sip. Suddenly, she raised her head and looked at Su Peijian. Do you think your father has thought about how to deal with Su Qingsang and her mother? Yeah. Su Peijian didn't understand why Li Qianxue's expression had changed, but she still repeated what Su Chenghui had said that morning. My dad will definitely stand up for me. You should know that he has always loved me the most. Although Su Peijian still hadn't vented her anger, it had dissipated a lot. Moreover, Su Chenghui's promise made her even more proud. No matter what, she believed in Su Chenghui. If he said he would take revenge for her, he would. She just needed to wait for Su Chenghui and Xiang Kaiping to be punished. Li Qianxue nodded. However, when she saw Su Peijian's face, she suddenly thought of what Su Qingsang had said to her today. She said, no matter how much my mother loves my father, she will never be with him again. Because she recognizes me now. She knows that my father has ignored me for so many years. My mother loves me so much that she can't even talk about being with my father anymore. She blames my father. She hates him so much. She can't even forgive my father. She doesn't even want to talk to him. Li Qianxue's hand that was holding the cup suddenly stopped. The thought that had flashed through his mind before came back to him again. The person Su Chenghui liked was Xiang Kaiping. She knew that very well. However, for so many years, he had been as cold to Su Qingsang as he could be. He ignored her as much as he could. On the contrary, he was quite good to Su Peijian, almost like he was holding her in the palm of his hand. Even the patriarchal attitude that some people in Lin City had was not seen in him at all. Not to mention the fact that Su Chenghui didn't treat Su Yusen as well as Su Peijian did. Su Peijian had been at home for more than 10 years when she went to school. But what about Su Yusen? As soon as he entered high school, he was sent to boarding school by Su Chenghui. He could only come back once a week. At that time, she seemed to have objected, but she couldn't resist the reason Su Chenghui gave her. She said that boys needed to exercise. But what about Su Chenghui and Su Qingsang? He was even colder than Su Yusen. For so many years, she had never seen Su Chenghui smile at Su Qingsang. Except for the routine greetings during Chinese New Year, Su Chenghui almost ignored Su Qingsang. If the person Su Chenghui loved was really Xiang Kaiping, Then his reaction to Su Qingsang was a little too strange, at least a little too abnormal. That wasn't the attitude a man should have toward the woman he loved. Instead, it was like he was treating someone unrelated to him. Why did Su Changhui treat Su Qingsang like this? You have to know that he has always loved me the most. Su Peijian's words just now appeared in her mind at the same time. Yes, the person Su Changhui loved the most was Su Peijian, and the person he disliked the least was Su Qingsang. But thinking about it this way was completely unreasonable. Not only was it unreasonable, but it also made Li Qianxue, who had never seriously thought about this strange situation, more and more suspicious. It was not normal, it was very abnormal. There must be something wrong when things were abnormal. So if Su Changhui treated Su Qingsang badly and Su Peijian well, then what was normal? Normally, Su Changhui should be the one who treated Su Peijian well and Su Qingsang well, right? Mom, she didn't speak, so Su Peijian called her. Li Qianxue didn't hear her. She was thinking about her question just now. Just what was wrong with this? She couldn't think of it at the moment, but the words between Su Qingsang and Su Peijian were like a replay, constantly going back and forth in her mind. The strange feeling that something was wrong came again. In a flash, Li Qianxue seemed to think of a key point. She just wanted to figure out that key point. Mom! Su Peijian called out even louder than before. Li Qianxue was shocked. Peijian, Mom, are you okay? When Su Peijian asked, she deliberately waved her hand in front of Li Qianxue. Chapter 377. Her thoughts had been interrupted, and she couldn't continue thinking. Seeing that Su Peijian still wanted to wake her up, Li Qianxue reached out and held her hand. It was rare that her tone was harsher than usual. How old are you? Why are you still so careless? I saw that you were ignoring me. Su Peijian pouted, obviously feeling a little wronged. Mom was thinking about something, and now you've interrupted me. Mom, what are you thinking about? Su Peijian couldn't control her curiosity. Tell me. You. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian again and suddenly wanted to compare her with Su Qingsang. Speaking of which, Su Peijian was about the same age as Su Qingsang. Su Peijian was naturally prettier. But in terms of stability, Su Qingsang was much more stable than Su Peijian. She didn't know if it was because she and Su Changhui had spoiled this child too much. Li Qianxue's heart suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She had spent so much effort to raise her daughter. In the end, she couldn't compare to Su Qingsang, an illegitimate daughter who grew up freely on her own. Wasn't this a slap to her face? Li Qianxue suddenly sat up straight. She looked at Su Peijian's face and was momentarily lost in thought. So, this was Su Chenghui's revenge? If this was Su Chenghui's revenge, then all his previous actions, those favoritism for Su Peijian and his disregard for Su Qingsang, could be explained. Overpraise? It was the most common method of wealthy families, indulging their children. It made them arrogant and willful. In the end, they even caused a lot of trouble. Was Su Chenghui planning to do that? It was completely possible. Su Chenghui probably wanted to spoil Su Peijian and lead her in a bad direction. However, because there was still her and old Master Li at home, she couldn't let him get what he wanted. Even so, Su Peijian's personality was more arrogant than that of the other rich young ladies in Lin City. Li Qianxue had forgotten that she had wanted to spoil this daughter of hers. She had given birth to a child that she had carried in her womb for 10 months. Naturally, she couldn't pamper him enough. However, now that he had noticed Su Chenghui's actions, he seemed to have figured out what kind of sinister intentions he had. Su Chenghui, so that's what you're planning? What kind of plan was this? Mom, what happened to you? Su Peijian didn't have time to figure out why Li Qianxue had acted strangely just now. However, her expression made her a little worried. Mom, are you really okay? I'm fine. Li Qianxue didn't look well. When she thought of Su Changhui, she naturally thought of what he had done. Li Qianxue felt a fire burning in her heart. She couldn't wait to rush to Su Chenghui and argue with him. However, Li Qianxue wasn't such an impulsive person. Moreover, She believed that she had seen through Su Qinghui's sinister intentions. How could she argue with him at this time? Peijian, speaking of which, you're not young anymore. There are some things that I think you should know your limits. Mom, Su Peijian was confused. Just talk about the conflict you had with that woman in Japan last time. I don't believe that you didn't say or do anything. Su Peijian's expression was a little ugly. Mom, why are you talking about me like that? It doesn't matter what I say about you. What matters is that you're mature now and have grown up. You can't deal with your circle of friends and social circles like you deal with business. Take Su Qingsang as an example. She's indeed someone we should avoid provoking now. Then the next time you see her, just ignore her. Of course, if she takes the initiative to bully you, you can naturally fight back. But if you take the initiative to provoke her, it will be easy for people to talk about you. Do you understand what I mean? Li Qianxue said sincerely. In her heart, she really hoped that her daughter could have a good personality and a good future. The engagement with the Qiu family was no longer valid. If Su Peijian wanted to marry better than the Qiu family, or be similar to the Qiu family, she had to restrain her personality. Mom, so you mean that I should tolerate Su Qingsang? Let her do what she wants? Why should I? Look at you. You're angry again. I mean, I want you to ignore her. If you ignore her, she won't be able to do anything. Don't you think so? Su Peijian didn't say anything. She looked at Li Qianxue's face. Her words were very similar to Su Qinghui's. She sighed in her heart. Okay, I got it. I'll just stay away from her next time. Is that okay? She knew that her daughter was still not convinced. Li Qianxue didn't say anything else. Anyway, Su Peijian would find out in the future. At this time, the waiter began to serve the dishes. Li Qianxue looked at her daughter and talked about the company again. The little bit of displeasure just now disappeared without a trace. The faint thought that she had almost been caught by her in a flash completely disappeared under her daughter's smiling face. However, everything today had become a temporarily hidden fire. She didn't know when it would burn up and illuminate all her doubts. After Su Qingsang came out of the shower, her eyes fell on the box on the dressing table. There was a layer of blue wrapping paper on the outside of the box. This time, there was no tacky bow. It looked simple and clean. This was a gift she specially bought for Su Yusen. However, it wasn't the weekend yet. Su Yusen was still in school. She suddenly remembered that she had given the rest of her hand to Li Qianxue today. Li Qianxue would probably be so angry that she would want to throw it away. Thinking about it, it was a pity. However, when she thought about Li Qianxue's face at that time, she didn't feel that it was a pity. Instead, she felt happy. What are you thinking about? Smiling like a fox? Hua Jinyao was behind her and happened to see her giggle in the mirror. He reached out and easily pulled her small body into his arms. Nothing. Su Qingsang shook her head and decided not to tell Hua Jinyao that Li Qianxue went to find trouble with her today. Is it really nothing? Hua Jinyao put his hand on her waist, and the threat was obvious. Are you going to tell me or not? Su Qingsang raised her hands to surrender. She was really scared of Hua Jinyao. I was just thinking about when to send this to Su Yusen. This was not the truth, but Hua Jinyao didn't intend to expose it immediately. You can send it to him anytime. If it weren't for the fact that Su Yusen still had some sibling feelings for Su Qingsang, he wouldn't have let her send this gift. Hua Jinyao suddenly sat up straight and turned Su Qingsang's face to look at him. Honey, speaking of which, you went to Japan. You played with Mom for a few days. In such a short time, you brought gifts for the people in your department and Su Yusen. What about me? Where's my gift? Chapter 378. Su Qingsang was stunned by Hua Jinyao's words. She rubbed the tip of her nose and curled her lips awkwardly at Hua Jinyao. You don't lack anything. I don't know what to give you either. Su Qingsang. Hua Jinyao was angered by her words. What do you mean I don't lack anything? Can you not give me anything just because I don't lack anything? Do the people in your department lack something? Does Su Yusen lack something? He was her husband after all. They should be closer than others, right? But what happened? Everyone had a gift, but he didn't. Only he didn't. Seeing that Hu Jinyao was really angry, Su Qingsang lowered her voice. That's different. How is it different? Their relationship with me is not the relationship I have with you. Hu Jinyao's face darkened because of her words. He didn't intend to let it go. What relationship do we have? Could it be that in your heart, your relationship with Su Yusin is closer than the relationship between you and me? If she dared to say that, Hu Jinyao would definitely punish her today and let her know that their relationship was much closer and deeper than Su Yusin's. I didn't mean that. Hu Jinyao got up and went back to the bed, looking like he didn't want to talk to her. Su Qingsang bit her lip and saw that he was really angry. She got up and sat down on the bed. She reached out to touch Hu Jinyao's arm, but he ignored her. He turned his back to her. Are you really angry? Yes. Very angry? Very angry. He had his back to her, so Su Qingsang couldn't see the expression on his face. After thinking about it, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. That? Can you calm down now? No. Hu Jinyao said that, but his expression didn't change at all. Then what about this? Su Qingsang leaned over and kissed him on the lips again. Not yet. If Su Qingsang couldn't see that this person was doing it on purpose, then she would have spent all this time with him for nothing. Her red lips rose. She didn't kiss him again. Instead, she put her hand next to him and put one hand on his arm. I said that our relationship is different from theirs because I feel that our relationship is closer. Since it was a closer relationship, in that case, it would be the same with or without this gift. But they were different. My relationship with them can be strengthened by gifts. But I don't need it with you. If Hu Jinyao didn't turn around, he wouldn't know if he was appeased or not. I really didn't mean to ignore you, because I don't know what to give you. She didn't have much experience with men. The wallet, belt, and the like that were usually used by men. The ones Hu Jinyao used were custom-made. When she went to Japan to buy those for him, she was afraid that he wouldn't like them. I need it. I need it very much. Hu Jinyao didn't turn around. As long as it's from you. I want every blade of grass. Can I? Sure. What will you do if I really forget to buy you a present? What can we do? Anyway, I'm very angry now. Very unhappy. Hu Jinyao didn't want to let it go. Su Qingsang looked at his back. She called him again, but he still didn't turn around. Su Qingsang looked down at the bathrobe she was wearing. She had been wearing a bathrobe since she took a shower. However, Hu Jinyao didn't notice that she didn't wear pajamas after taking a shower like before. She gritted her teeth, stood up, and left the bed. Hu Jinyao was angry with her. After coaxing her for so long, why didn't she coax him a little longer? He was angry. He decided to teach Su Qingsang a good lesson later. Let her know what a husband's power was. No, not just a lesson. He wanted, hearing the rustling sound behind him. That woman still didn't know to come over? Hu Jinyao was angry. It was really infuriating to marry such a wooden wife. He sat up and was about to press Su Qingsang under his body to teach her a lesson, but he was shocked by the scene in front of him. Su Qingsang's bathrobe had been taken off by herself. Her clothes were exposed. That was, Hu Jinyao blinked and looked at Su Qingsang's head. She was dressed as a cat girl and had a pair of cat ears on her head. She was obviously not used to this kind of outfit. She was very uncomfortable and didn't know where to put her hands and feet. Actually, I also prepared a gift for you. It was the first time in Su Qingsang's life that she had done such a thing. She was really embarrassed. My gift is myself. Hu Jinyao, who had always been calm and collected, looked at the cute cat ears on Su Qingsang's head and the fluffy cat tail behind her. Coupled with the outfit she was wearing, he suddenly got off the bed and carried Su Qingsang. This is your gift. Su Qingsang's face was as red as an apple. Her eyes wandered around, but she didn't dare to look at Hu Jinyao. What did you buy it? He didn't believe that she would dare to buy it with Xiang Kaiping accompanying her. Su Qingsang's face became even redder. Not only her face, but her whole body was covered with a layer of red. How could she tell him that she was shopping in Japan? Xiang Kaiping wanted to go to the bathroom, and Yumei took her there. She happened to see the lingerie shop next door, and the shop owner put the kitten outfit on the mannequin outside. Not only kittens, but there were also bunnies, nurses' uniforms, and so on in the shop. She thought of Hu Jinyao, and for some reason, she bought 2 sets of lingerie like that. Only this? Hua Jinyao put her on the bed and folded on top of her. Or do you have something else? Yes, there is something else. Su Qing-sang's face became even redder. In fact, she had wanted to wear it for him when she came back last night. However, Su Changwei suddenly appeared yesterday, and she forgot about it. What is it? Hua Jinyao's eyes were hot. He stared at the pair of golden kitten ears on Su Qing-sang's head and felt his heart itch. Rabbit ears. Su Qing-sang didn't dare to look at Hua Jinyao's face at all. She really felt like her whole body was burning. Hua Jinyao lowered his head and kissed her lips. Wear it for me tomorrow. Su Qing-sang nodded lightly. Hua Jinyao was satisfied. He kissed her cheek and moved closer to her ear. I like this gift. I like it very much. Su Qing-sang was so embarrassed that her body curled up. She wanted to avoid Hua Jinyao's lips, but failed. Then, Hua Jinyao used his actions to prove to her how much he liked this gift. After midnight, Su Qing-sang regretted it. She shouldn't have given this gift at all, because someone obviously liked it too much. He repeated in her ear over and over again how much he loved this gift. Over and over again, he told her how much he liked this gift. Chapter 379. Su Qing-sang almost couldn't get up the next day after being disturbed by Hua Jinyao for most of the night. She gritted her teeth and wanted to find the rabbit set and throw it away before washing up. However, she couldn't find it anymore. She blushed. She didn't need to think to know who took it. For a moment, she was angry, annoyed, regretful, and a little expectant. After washing up, she walked out of the room. Xiang Kaiping had already prepared breakfast. Qing-sang, don't you need to go to work today? I need to go to work. I'll go after breakfast. Su Qing-sang's waist was a little weak, and she looked a little embarrassed. In the past, she didn't feel it when she lived with Hua Jinyao alone. However, Xiang Kaiping was at home now, and Hua Jinyao still didn't know how to control himself. It made her really uncomfortable. As expected, during breakfast, Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qing-sang and wanted to say something. Mom, what's wrong? Su Qing-sang thought that something was wrong. She wasn't there yesterday. Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue wouldn't come to trouble her again, would they? Su Qing-sang was a little worried. She was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would be at a disadvantage. Qing-sang, don't be angry if I tell you. Xiang Kaiping's words made Su Qing-sang nervous. Li Qianxue didn't teach her a lesson. Did they really come again? I know that you and Jinyao are young couples. It's inevitable that you are a little passionate, but you still have to control yourself. Su Qing-sang blinked. When she realized what Xiang Kaiping said, she was suddenly embarrassed. Mom, don't be angry. I'm not blaming you. I just think that you still have to care about your health. Don't you think so? Xiang Kaiping was an experienced person. She could understand the young people's passion for each other. However, seeing that her daughter's health was obviously not good, she was really worried. Don't think too much. I don't want to interfere with your private affairs. I just think that Jinyao doesn't know how to control himself. She looked at Su Qing-sang's walking posture and knew that she had a hard time yesterday. Her daughter had to go to work today. However, he really didn't know how to feel sorry for her. Mom, Su Qing-sang tried her best to remain calm and tried her best to make her expression look normal. You're only saying this to me, aren't you? I also told Jinyao. Xiang Kaiping was not with Su Qing-sang in the past. She felt sorry for her daughter. Now that he had recognized the daughter, he naturally wanted to pamper her and make up for the lost time. She was happy that Su Qing-sang and Hua Jinyao loved each other so much. But looking at Hua Jinyao's body, and then looking at Su Qing-sang's petite figure, Hua Jinyao's heart skipped a beat. Xiang Kaiping's heart ached for her daughter. Mom, Su Qing-sang was embarrassed. For an elder to say something like this, it was really, you don't have to feel embarrassed. Jinyao knew he was wrong. He promised me. Xiang Kaiping was actually a little embarrassed to say this. He always felt like he was pointing fingers at a young man. But if she didn't say it, she really couldn't help it. All right, Mom, I got it. Su Qing-sang couldn't sit still anymore. She lowered her head and covered up the waves of discomfort by eating. Because of this, Su Qing-sang forgot to tell him her plan. The next day, the people from the administrative office came to ask her about it. So Hong Chun reported her name, and the people from the administrative office asked if she was willing to go to Song City Central Hospital to participate in the exchange program. Of course, Su Qing-sang was willing. She had been studying cervical cancer recently, and there was a doctor in Song City who was very experienced in this area. The departure time was 3 days later. Su Qing-sang only remembered that she seemed to have forgotten to tell Hu Jinyao about it. Was this considered acting first and reporting later? Su Qing-sang finally remembered to mention it when they were having dinner that night. I'll go for the exchange program for half a month. There is a Professor Wu in Song City, and I have always wanted to learn from her. Hu Jinyao and Xiang Kaiping looked at each other. Both of them were a little surprised by Su Qing-sang's decision. Qing-sang, I don't object to the exchange program, but why do we have to go to a place so far away from Song City? Song City was in another province, very far from Lin City. Although it was as developed as Lin City, it was still not as comfortable as being at home. Xiang Kaiping and her daughter had just gotten to know each other. She really couldn't bear to be separated for half a month. We have a collaboration with Song City Central Hospital, Su Qing-sang explained very patiently. This time, this opportunity is also very rare. Since the hospital has given me this opportunity, of course, I have to cherish it. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. He knew how focused Su Qing-sang was. She could ignore him for a week for the sake of a thesis or a research project. It was understandable that she wanted to go to Song City. But it will be the new year by the time you come back. Xiang Kaiping was still a little worried. If this time is delayed for a few days, won't you be able to come back in time for the new year? Mom, what are you thinking about? Su Qing-sang wanted to laugh, but also felt a little sad. Mom, we said half a month, so it will be half a month. I will definitely come back in half a month. Besides, I still want to come back to spend the new year with you guys. Really? Of course. After saying this, Su Qing-sang thought of her promise to Li Qianxue. She turned to look at Hu Jinyao. Shall we go to Rong City for the new year this year? Rong City? Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. Xiang Kaiping was stunned. Why are we going to Rong City? Mom, Jinyao is from Rong City. It is normal for us to go to Rong City for the new year. Besides, Mom, haven't you always been in Rong City? I also want to see where you used to live. Xiang Kaiping was a smart person. She immediately thought of the key point. Wanting to go to Rong City was not the real reason. She wanted to avoid Su Chenghui and his family, right? Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. When he heard Su Qing-sang say this, he looked up at her and said, You will go to Rong City after the new year and not come back. You can say that. Su Qing-sang nodded. Since she had promised Li Qianxue, of course she would do it. She was actually not afraid of a direct confrontation with Li Qianxue, and she didn't believe that Li Qianxue would really dare to do anything to her. After all, she still had Su Chenghui and Hu Jinyao. Moreover, Li Qianxue was an extremely prideful person. It wasn't her style to let go of her pride to deal with a little illegitimate daughter like her. After all these years, she and Li Qianxue could live in harmony. She knew that as long as she didn't step on Li Qianxue's bottom line, Li Qianxue wouldn't do anything to her. Since Su Qing-sang had already made up her mind, the matter was settled. Su Qing-sang would go to Song City for an exchange program. When she came back, the family would pack up and go to Rong City together. Xiang Kaiping didn't care. Wherever her daughter went, she would go. Chapter 380. Will you come back later? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qing-sang. Although she had only lived in this place for less than 2 months, she already felt a little reluctant to leave. Wasn't it nice to be here? Only his daughter and son-in-law, no other outsiders. If he went to Rong City, Hu Jinyao's family must be very rich. By then, would Su Qing-sang really be able to handle those interpersonal relationships and things? How could living with her mother-in-law be as comfortable as living with her husband and wife outside? Mom, of course I have to come back. Su Qing-sang had some things to pack. He also handed over his work in the hospital. More importantly, if she were to work in a hospital in Rong City, she would need a recommendation letter from the hospital here. She could rely on Hu Jinyao, but she preferred to rely on herself. She believed she had the ability. After dinner, she chatted with Xiang Kaiping for a while. That included where they would stay after they arrived at Rong City. Su Qing-sang had already thought of how to settle them down. She was also afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel uncomfortable. He told her that he would definitely live with her in the future. Only then did Xiang Kaiping feel somewhat relieved. As long as she wasn't living with her mother-in-law, everything was fine. It wasn't that she looked down on her daughter. Indeed, in terms of status, she was much lower than Hu Jinyao. She was also afraid that her daughter would be at a disadvantage. Su Qingsang was touched by Xiang Caiping's concern for her. After comforting her for a long time, she finally felt more at ease. Besides, there was still Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao also promised that he would not let Su Qingsang suffer. With his assurance, Xiang Kaiping could only put her mind at ease. The three of them chatted and laughed for a while before Xiang Kaiping dispelled all her worries. As soon as he returned to his room, Hu Jinyao's expression changed. He looked at Su Qingsang, his eyes full of wisdom. "What's wrong with you?" Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable under his gaze. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Qingsang from head to toe. "Go ahead." "What?" Su Qingsang blinked. She didn't believe that Hu Jinyao could guess it. "Did the Su family cause you trouble?" Hu Jinyao hit the nail on the head. Su Qingsang almost couldn't hold back her laughter. "Nonsense, there's no such thing." "No?" Hu Jinyao raised his eyebrows. "You weren't this enthusiastic when I asked you to go to Rome City before. I'm just happy that it's almost the new year and I've recognized a mother." "Who?" Hu Jinyao thought of the Su family members. "Your father? Li Qianxue? Or Su Peijian? You're thinking too much." "I really didn't." Su Qingsang almost raised 3 fingers to swear. "I really didn't. Su Peijian suffered in Japan, so I don't think she'll bother you again. Su Chenghui had been here last time. Besides, he wouldn't go to the extent of finding trouble with you." "That is Li Qianxue." Wu Jinyao took a step forward. His deep gaze was sharp and direct. "Li Qianxue looked for you?" Su Qingsang felt a little helpless. It was really not a good thing to have a husband who was too smart. Why did she come to me? Even if she didn't come to find me, I would still go to Rome City. It really is her. Hu Jinyao had already gotten her answer. He looked Su Qingsang up and down. "Did she do it?" "No." Su Qingsang quickly denied it. "I really didn't. Why would a person like her hit me?" "She didn't hit you?" Hu Jinyao didn't believe it. "No. Why would she look for you? You can't hide the fact that your mother is back. But I don't think your father would tell her. Even if she wanted to look for someone, she would look for your mother. Why did she look for you?" Su Qingsang began to feel a headache. "Hu Jinyao, you actually don't have to be so smart." Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes. "If you don't tell me, I'll ask our mother directly." "Don't. I'm really scared of you." Su Qingsang avoided the topic and didn't say that Li Qianxue hit her. She only said that she did come to find trouble with her, but there were many people in the hospital, and she promised her that she would go to Rome City in the future. "That's right. You see, I decided to go to Rome City. Didn't we agree before? I just went a little earlier." As Su Qingsang spoke, she held Hu Jinyao's hand. "Don't be angry. She didn't do anything to me. As for taking my mother to Rome City, even if she didn't say it, I would think so. After all, if my mother stayed in Lin City, she would run into my father's family." Hu Jinyao wasn't angry. He stared at the guilty look on her face. "You haven't told me why Li Qianxue came to look for you." Su Qingsang's eyes looked around, but she didn't look at Hu Jinyao. She didn't need to tell Hu Jinyao about the conflict with Su Peijian in Japan. Who knows? Maybe she knows that my mother is back. "Wife." Hu Jinyao squeezed her palm a little hard. "Do you know that you are really a bad liar?" "Really?" Su Qingsang blinked. "So I didn't lie." Hu Jinyao looked at her and let go. "Okay, I suddenly think it's better for me to ask our mother. I'll also tell your mother about Li Qianxue coming to look for you. I don't think your mother knows, does she?" Su Qingsang was defeated by him. She quickly grabbed his hand and said, "Actually, it's really not a big deal." She hesitantly mentioned the conflict in Japan. "Actually, I wasn't injured and I didn't suffer any losses. It's just that my mother was too impatient." She slapped Su Peijian in the face. Hu Jinyao's face was a little gloomy. He stared at Su Qingsang's eyes for a long time without saying a word. Su Qingsang begged for mercy. "Don't be like this. It's really nothing." She even got slapped in the face. Hu Jinyao still didn't speak. Su Qingsang felt more and more helpless. "Look at her. Who dares to hit her since she was a child. My mother has already stood up for me. I didn't suffer any losses from Andy. So let's just let it go, okay? Hua Jinyao looked at her face and understood what she meant. It was better to avoid trouble. However, she was willing to let it go, but he was not. Holding her hand, Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft. Wife, I hope you understand one thing. You're my wife. She's my wife. If others bully you, it's the same as bullying me. Next time you encounter something like this, don't care who they are. Just hit them back. Hua Jinyao, how could she be so violent? Even if you're at a disadvantage. If you can't beat them, it's okay. Come back and tell me. Su Qingsang looked at his serious eyes and the domineering tone in his words. She wanted to laugh, but also wanted to cry. Are you trying to instigate me to fight outside? No. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist. I want to tell you, when you encounter those who don't have eyes, don't be polite and don't be afraid. Don't let others bully you. Chapter 381. I know. Su Qingsang blushed a little and leaned against Hua Jinyao's chest. Don't worry. I'm not the kind of person who will let myself suffer. Otherwise, she wouldn't have fought back when Li Qianxue came to her door. Really, Hua Jinyao didn't believe it. With her personality, she must have suffered a lot in the Su family in the past. Let bygones be bygones. Hua Jinyao would never let her suffer again in the future. Su Qingsang's face was pressed against his chest, and she smelled his clean, masculine scent. Suddenly, she burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? Nothing. Su Qingsang thought of Li Qianxue's angry look yesterday. Actually, I fought back yesterday. She just didn't fight back, clearly. Meeting Hua Jinyao's probing gaze, she told him about the gift she casually gave yesterday. She smiled a little proudly, like a little fox who had done something bad. She probably hasn't received such a casual gift in her life. Hua Jinyao imagined Li Qianxue's expression at that time and looked at Su Qingsang, who was laughing openly. He reached out and pinched her cheek. You also think it's funny, right? Su Qingsang stuck out her tongue. Can you not be angry now? He wasn't angry. He was just not happy that she was hiding something from him. Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft as he held her up. Still angry, very angry. If you want to, I won't be angry. Why don't you do something that won't make me angry? The pride on Su Qingsang's face suddenly disappeared. There's no need. What do you think? Hua Jinyao didn't intend to let her go just like that. The kitten has worn it. The bunny hasn't worn it yet. Try it today. Don't. Su Qingsang suddenly chickened out. My waist is still weak. Hua Jinyao glared at her and looked a little disgusted. You're so useless. It's not that I'm useless. The moment Su Qingsang's body hit the bed, her tone quickened. It's that you're too useful. Hua Jinyao supported his body with one hand and looked at Su Qingsang's pleading face. He thought of this morning. Xiang Kaiping asked him to control himself and said that Su Qingsang's body was weak and couldn't take it. Are you really tired? I'm really tired. Su Qingsang bit her lip and put on a look of negotiation. How about tomorrow? Hua Jinyao looked at her and didn't continue. Turning over, he laid down beside her. Su Qingsang was relieved. She couldn't help but look at him again and found that he was also looking at her. His eyes were deep and spirited, like the stars in the night sky. Su Qingsang had to admit that no matter how many times she saw him, she would always be captivated by his handsomeness. She propped her hand up, leaned over, and kissed his eyes. Hua Jinyao lowered his voice. Don't seduce me. Otherwise, I won't be able to keep my promise. Su Qingsang stopped talking, made a zipping gesture, and quickly slipped down from the other side of the bed. I'm going to shower. Looking at the closed door of the bathroom, Hua Jinyao still had a fire burning in his body, but it had subsided a lot. He thought about what Su Qingsang had said. It was good to go to Rome City. Since there was still more than half a month's time, he could take advantage of this opportunity to arrange things here. He believed that if they were going back to Rome City, Grandpa would be very happy, right? Su Qingsang decided to go to Song City for the exchange program. There were also a lot of things to pack. The hospital let them go home one day in advance to pack their things. The plane to Song City was at 10 o'clock the next morning. They could go to the airport by themselves or go to the hospital. The hospital car would take them there. Su Qing-sang was gone for half a month. Hua Jinyao, who had considerately let her rest for the night yesterday, didn't intend to endure it anymore today. He only let Su Qing-sang go after torturing her for a long time. The next day, Su Qing-sang couldn't open her eyes. It was Hua Jinyao who carried her. He knew that he had gone a little overboard yesterday. He carried her into the bathroom and helped her to wash up. Xiang Kaiping stood in the living room and watched Su Qing-sang walk out with her suitcase in her hand. She wanted to say something, but stopped. If Su Qing-sang wasn't going for the exchange program, she would have followed her. "Mom, I'm leaving. Did you bring enough clothes? Did you bring everything? How's the weather over there? Did you put an umbrella in your bag? What if it snows?" "Mom." Su Qing-sang put her hand on her forehead. "I brought enough. Song City is hotter than Lin City. I brought my umbrella. It won't snow over there. Don't worry." That's good, that's good." Xiang Kaiping was still worried. "Take good care of yourself when you get there. Don't be too busy. No matter how hard I work, my health is more important." For so many years, Su Qing-sang had always been alone, whether she was studying or going out. After marrying Hua Jinyao, he had become a person who did more than he said. This was the first time someone had nagged her about what she should pay attention to when she went out. She couldn't help but give Xiang Kaiping a hug. "I'm not a kid anymore. Don't worry. I will take good care of myself." That's good. That's good." Xiang Kaiping repeated this sentence over and over again. He felt conflicted and gratified at the same time. Su Qing-sang knew that if she wasn't at home, Xiang Kaiping's imagination would run wild. It was better to find something for her to do. "Mom, didn't you say you knew how to make bacon and sausages? I think the weather in Lin City is quite good these days. If you have nothing to do, why don't you make something delicious? When I come back." Okay. Xiang Kaiping seemed to be suddenly energized. "I know how to make bacon and sausages. I even know how to make beef jerky. If you like it, I'll make more." That's great." Su Qing-sang blinked at Hua Jinyao as she spoke. "Jinyao likes it very much too. Thank you. It's not hard at all." Xiang Kaiping wanted to do something for her daughter. How could she feel that it was hard? After sending Su Qing-sang off, she began to think about what ingredients she wanted to buy. Speaking of which, she hadn't done it for many years. She was a little worried that she couldn't do it. Hua Jinyao helped Su Qing-sang carry her luggage into the car and close the door for her. Before starting the car, he glanced at her. "You asked so much in one go. Aren't you afraid that your mother will tire herself out? Don't worry. She can't stay idle. I've already calculated everything. When I come back, she'll be almost done." Hua Jinyao smiled and reached out to rub the top of her head. "You, right? What do you mean by my mother? Isn't my mother your mother? Besides, my mother is tired. Don't you know how to remind her when you're home?" Su Qing-sang blinked at him with obvious dissatisfaction in her eyes. Chapter 382. That's more like it. Su Qing-sang smiled. When she smiled, the corners of her eyes were tinged with joy. Her facial features, which could only be considered beautiful, were particularly dazzling at this time. Hua Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. "Remember to miss me." Su Qing-sang blinked and said, "We'll see. I miss you whenever I have time. If I don't have time, I won't think about it." Hua Jinyao stepped on the accelerator, glanced at her, and said calmly, "Don't worry. I have a way to make you miss me every day." Su Qing-sang snorted with a look of disbelief. However, he couldn't hide the smile on his face. The winter sun outside the car window was just right. She stretched out her hand and watched as the light shone on her hand, dyeing it with a layer of gold. This kind of life was really good and blissful. She had a man she liked as her husband and a mother who loved her dearly. If she could, she really wanted to be happy like this forever. She thought, I should be happy forever, right? Su Qing-sang didn't know until she got on the plane. Other than her, Zhuo Hongshun was also among the doctors participating in the exchange. When she got on the plane and saw Zhuo Hongshun, her first reaction was to thank Hua Jinyao for not knowing. Her second reaction was, would Hua Jinyao be angry if he found out? It couldn't be, right? Even if he wanted to be angry. She's on the plane. That was it. Junior sister, you've come? When Zhuo Hongshun saw Su Qing-sang, he stood up and extended his hand to her. Come, I'll help you put your luggage on it. Thank you. Senior brother Zhua. You're welcome. Zhua Hongshan was a man, so he easily picked up Su Qingsang's luggage and put it on the floor. Did you not rest well? The moment Su Qingsang sat down, she realized that not only was Zhua Hongshan there, but the two of them were sitting together. Was this really not arranged by Zhua Hongshan? As if sensing her confusion, Zhua Hongshan took the initiative to explain, when I found out about the exchange program, the first thing I did was to inform the administration and recommend you. Maybe it's because of this that our positions are together. It's okay. Su Qingsang waved her hand. It's okay to sit together. I happen to have a question to ask you. You're being too polite by saying that you're asking for advice. If you have any questions, just ask. Thank you, senior brother. Su Qingsang sat down. The rest of the journey became a medical exchange with Zhua Hongshan. As for the fact that Zhua Hongshan was going to the exchange program with her, there was no need to tell Hu Jinyao. Thinking of a certain someone's jealousy, the corners of Su Qingsang's mouth turned up, and she smiled happily. Zhua Hongshan had just returned from the bathroom and saw the smile on Su Qingsang's face. It was a smile that only appeared when he thought of his lover or lover. His expression darkened as he sighed in his heart. Sure enough, he was late, and Su Qingsang should be living a happy life, right? Xiang Kaiping had been busy ever since her daughter left. The sweater is almost finished. There were still 2 more sleeves to go. She wanted to finish it before her daughter came back. My daughter wants to eat sausages, bacon, and beef jerky. That was not difficult. The weather in Lin City was good these days. She had already decided the sausage first. Hu Jinyao noticed that Xiang Kaiping seemed to be more energetic every day since she had something to do. The little impact caused by Su Qinghui's appearance seemed to have disappeared. He could not help but feel that no one knew their mother better than their daughter. Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping had been mother and daughter for less than 2 months, but the mother-daughter relationship was already very deep. With the heart to busy herself for her daughter, he did not have to worry about Xiang Kaiping being bored. When he told Su Qingsang about this, she was half guilty and half touched. She really just said it casually, but Xiang Kaiping's positive attitude made her a little speechless. She secretly decided that when she returned to Lin City, she would treat Xiang Kaiping better. She had to treat her better. Xiang Kaiping treated Su Qingsang well, not because she wanted her to return the favor. She wanted to make up for the motherly love that had been missing for so many years. For the next week or so, Xiang Kaiping cured sausages, bacon, and beef jerky, which were the special New Year products of Lin City. She also helped Su Qingsang knit the remaining 2 sleeves of the sweater. The white sweater looked very clean and refreshing. Xiang Kaiping also knitted a few mulberry leaves on the front of the sweater, and the crisscross lines looked very delicate. Xiang Kaiping finished knitting, but felt that something was missing. The sweater was not high-collared, and she was afraid that it would be cold when she went to Rong City. After thinking about it, Xiang Kaiping decided to buy some wool tomorrow and knit a scarf for Su Qingsang. Not only could she knit it for Su Qingsang, she could also give one to Hu Jinyao. During this period of time, Hu Jinyao had also been taking good care of her. Xiang Kaiping was not an ungrateful person. Hu Jinyao was very good to Su Qingsang, and he was also very good to her. She now not only treated Su Qingsang as her daughter, but also Hu Jinyao as her son-in-law. Knitting a scarf was easier, so she did it immediately. Xiang Kaiping went out early the next day. She went to buy wool. Lin City had changed a lot in more than 20 years. If Su Qingsang had not taken her to many places before, Xiang Kaiping might not have been able to recognize it. Xiang Kaiping planned to go home after buying the wool. When she passed by a very famous shopping mall in Lin City, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She saw a rather luxurious jade shop next to the mall, and there was an exhibition in the window of the shop. It was a jade Buddha. Men wore guanyin, and women wore Buddha. He recalled that his daughter was always in contact with patients and pregnant women in the hospital every day. He also had her run here and there to communicate with them. She wanted to buy this jade Buddha as a gift for her daughter. He entered the room. The shop was very big, and all the jade ornaments were arranged into several counters according to their types. There were jade bracelets, jade pendants, and jade ornaments. Xiang Kaiping glanced at it and walked directly to the counter where the jade pendant was sold. She asked the shop assistant to show her the jade Buddha. The shop assistant glanced at the clothes Xiang Kaiping was wearing and hesitated for a few seconds. "Auntie, this piece of jade is the treasure of our shop. It won't be cheap." Xiang Kaiping looked at the shop assistant from head to toe. However, he didn't get angry. "Miss, I'm old enough to be your mother. Do you think I'm here to tease you?" "Auntie, look at what you're saying. That's not what I meant." The shop assistant was a little embarrassed by Xiang Kaiping's words. She turned around reluctantly to take the jade Buddha statue. The jade Buddha statue was not very big. It was just a little bigger than a pigeon's egg. It was a two-faced Buddha. The Maitreya Bodhisattva's big belly could accommodate. This jade Buddha statue was indeed very good, both in terms of the carving skills and the quality of the jade. When she was looking at it, the shop assistant was very worried and put her hand on the counter. Later, she felt that she was being too obvious, so she cleared her throat. "Auntie, be careful when you carry it." Chapter 383. The shop assistant was surprised to see that Xiang Kaiping was serious. "Auntie, this piece of jade is an old pit jade. It's the king of jade in Myanmar. Back then, this jade... Little girl, just tell me how much it is." "Auntie, the price of this jade is 550,000 yuan. Our shop is now offering a 20% discount on jade wares. After the discount, it still costs 440,000 yuan. Xiang Kaiping frowned. "That's not a good price. 440,000. It was too unpleasant to hear. Ask your boss if he can sell it for 390,000. Forever and ever." To tell the truth, no matter how good the quality of this jade artifact was, there was still a certain amount of water in it. From her point of view, this jade Buddha should be around 300,000. "Auntie, look at what you're saying. We're such a big shop, and we don't specialize in your business. This was all at a discount. I can't go any lower after the discount." Xiang Kaiping looked conflicted. She really liked this piece of jade. He also felt that it was suitable for Qing Sang. But 44 wasn't a good number, especially in the dialect of Lin City, for sounds the same as death. This made her even more displeased. The shop assistant sneered inwardly at Kaiping's reaction. What did he mean by 440,000 not sounding good? Wasn't it because he didn't have money? "Little girl, how about this you ask your boss? Can you sell it?" Xiang Kaiping was not short of tens of thousands of dollars. However, she hoped that it would be a good omen for her daughter. Today, if this jade Buddha statue could be bought for 390,000 yuan, she would buy it. "Auntie, that's really impossible." The shop assistant didn't even want to ask. Now she finally realized that this woman had no money at all. If she really asked, the boss would scold her. "Little girl, you don't look like a businessman. You're not your boss. How do you know you can't buy it?" "Although I'm not the boss, I'm not the boss. But we have rules here." She would be a fool if she really went to ask. Xiang Kaiping's expression was a little ugly. She naturally knew that in places like this, people were picky and dismissive. But she didn't expect to encounter such a thing one day. "Little girl, I'm not leaving yet. Are you going to ask your boss? There's really no way to ask about this. If you don't like it, you can pay the original price of 560,000. I don't mind. How can a little girl like you talk like that?" Xiang Kaiping was furious. "I've said it before. You're not your boss. You don't have the right to decide, do you?" "I don't, but I think I have the right to decide whether to ask the boss or not, right?" The shop assistant's face was cold, and he refused to go. The two were in a stalemate. Just then, Su Peijian walked in with a few noble ladies. Li Qinxue had a good friend whose birthday was next week. Li Qinxue had been very busy with work recently, so she asked Su Peijian to pick out a gift for her friend. When Su Peijian parked the car in front, she bumped into Luo Meishan's mother and Song Yoha's mother, who were also out shopping. Madame Luo and Madame Song had a good relationship with Li Qinxue. They naturally knew the people that Li Qinxue knew. It was Madame Luo and Madame Song's birthday the following week. Madame Luo and Madame Song also wanted to pick out a gift for Madame Luo. The three of them bumped into each other here. Su Peijian greeted the two aunties and suggested that they come to Bo Guzhai to take a look. Su Peijian saw Xiang Kaiping as soon as she entered the room. Seeing her, the old and new hatred from the last slap in the face came flooding back. Su Peijian almost couldn't keep the calm smile on her face. "Peijian, what's wrong?" Madame Luo looked at Su Peijian and followed her gaze. "That's nothing, just a mistress." She said the last sentence so softly that the other two didn't hear it clearly. Su Peijian was a regular customer of Bo Guzhai. Not only her, but Madame Luo and Madame Song also came often. A shop assistant who already knew them quickly came up to them when she saw the three of them. Miss Su, Madame Luo, Madame Song. Their attitude toward Xiang Kaiping was completely different. The shop assistant smiled like a flower when she saw them. "May I know what you are here to see today?" Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to choose something. Instead, she looked in Xiang Kaiping's direction. "What's going on over there?" "That." The shop assistant had heard it just now. Hearing Su Peijian's question, she told her what happened in a low voice. She obviously has no money, but she likes to pretend to have money. She's already paid more than 300,000 yuan, and she's reluctant to leave tens of thousands behind. She even wants us to call her boss. "Don't you think that's infuriating?" The shop assistant spoke softly. After all, even if Xiang Kaiping couldn't afford it, they couldn't openly offend a customer. Su Peijian snorted when she heard that, a hint of mockery appearing on her face. Madame Song and Madame Luo weren't interested in this matter and were about to choose a gift. Su Peijian turned to look at the two madams. "Auntie Song, Auntie Luo, I know this customer who can't afford it. Since she can't afford the tens of thousands, why don't I help her out?" When she said this, there was a flash of malice in her eyes. Madame Luo and Madame Song didn't see it, but since Su Peijian said she knew the customer, they let her be. "Peijian, why don't you go first? We'll wait for you here. Auntie, you two can accompany me." Su Peijian hooked her arm around Madame Luo's. "I'm just a little girl. I'm afraid that the auntie will be embarrassed and reject my good intentions." This, Madame Luo and Madame Song looked at each other and didn't object. Not to mention that the Su family was the most famous family in Lin City. Just based on their relationship with Li Qianxue, they had no reason not to help her. Just like that, the two of them followed Su Peijian to Xiang Kaiping's side. Xiang Kaiping didn't have to buy this piece of jade. However, the shop assistant's attitude annoyed her. She had to see the owner of the jade today. "Miss, when you're doing business, everyone is a customer. Since you're not the owner, how can you make decisions for your boss? This piece of jade is of good quality, but 300,000 is good enough. I'm offering 390,000 just to get a good start. If you really want to do business, go and ask your boss now. Can you sell it?" "Auntie, I've already said we can't sell it." "Oh, Auntie, why? Are you buying jade?" Su Peijian had seen enough. She took a few steps forward and stood next to Xiang Kaiping. She obviously didn't like Xiang Kaiping, but she still called her affectionately. It was as if they knew each other very well. What's going on?" When Xiang Kaiping saw Su Peijian, she was a little unhappy. She took a step back, and her attitude was defensive and distant. "Miss Su, this has nothing to do with you. Please step aside." Chapter 384. While speaking, Su Peijian glanced at the shop assistant. "Didn't you hear? Ask your boss to come here." "Miss Su?" The shop assistant treated Su Peijian with a completely different attitude. She bowed and said awkwardly, "I'll go get him now." She didn't have to give face to Xiang Kaiping, who was obviously poor, but she had to give face to Su Peijian. Yes, in business, harmony makes money. Even if we can't afford it, there will be unreasonable people. We have to be nice. Don't you think so? Su Peijian seemed to be talking to the shop assistant, but she was actually looking at Xiang Kaiping. Her meaning was obvious. Don't buy it if you can't afford it. Don't look at it if you don't like it. Xiang Kaiping frowned. She really didn't like Su Peijian. Not only did she dislike her, but she also hated the girl when she thought of how Su Peijian had bullied Su Qingsang all these years. "Miss Su, this has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with me, but Su Qingsang and I are sisters. I should care about her mother, don't you think?" Care? Was she here to watch the show? Xiang Kaiping didn't believe that Su Peijian would be so kind. "Auntie, actually, If you really can't afford it, it's okay. I'll buy it for you. After all, I don't care about a few 100,000 yuan. Su Peijian said it casually, as if a few 100,000 yuan was just a few dozen yuan. Xiang Kaiping didn't like Su Peijian's attitude. In fact, she didn't understand. How could a gentleman like Su Changhui have a daughter like that? No need. I can afford it. Really? Su Peijian didn't believe it. In her opinion, even if Wu Jinyao was rich, he wouldn't spend it on Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, came from an ordinary family. It was impossible for her to be rich. How could she afford a jade pendant that was worth a few 100,000 yuan? Was that a joke? Auntie, are you sure? It's better not to be so prideful. Su Peijian turned to look at the jade Buddha. She had good taste. She looked up at the shop assistant and asked, "How much did you say it was?" "Miss Su, the original price of this jade is 550,000. For the new year, we are offering a 20% discount on all jade wares. After the 20% discount, it will be 440,000 yuan. 440,000? Su Peijian nodded and glanced at the jade Buddha statue. It's not expensive. Auntie, I'll see you off. There's no need. I don't want it. Xiang Kaiping had been in the mood to pick out a gift for her daughter. There was nothing left now. She turned to leave, but Su Peijian stepped forward and blocked her way. Auntie, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I already said that I bought it for you. Why are you leaving? Get out of my way. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian. Her expression had already darkened. Take a look. As Su Peijian spoke, she glanced at Madame Luo and Madame Song. I'm doing this out of kindness. Look, this gift can't even be given away. Don't you think it's strange? If Madame Luo and Madame Song still couldn't tell that Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping weren't on good terms, they would have lived for so many years in vain. Madame Luo rolled her eyes and stepped forward to stand next to Xiang Kaiping. Madame, Peijian is a good girl. Since she said that she would give it to you, you should just accept it. Yes. Madame Song also stepped forward and stood on the other side of Xiang Kaiping. I think it's rare for you to see a piece of jade like this in your life. That was really unpleasant to hear. Xiang Kaiping was being held by two people, one on the left and one on the right. Her expression was already quite unpleasant. Su Peijian, what do you mean by this? Any look? Why are you so nervous? I've told you everything. What if you can't afford this jade pendant? I'll buy it for you. I'm doing my best for Qing Sang. Su Peijian suddenly looked at Xiang Kaiping. All right, why didn't Qing Sang go shopping with you? Could it be that she didn't want to? Then I'll have to talk to her later. Don't go looking for her. From Xiang Kaiping's point of view, her daughter was the best. Stay away from her. Su Peijian's expression was a little ugly. She stood there and glared at Xiang Kaiping. She felt that this woman was really annoying. Annie, look, that's not right. I'm Qing Sang's sister. How can I stay away from her? Madame Luo and Madame Song heard this and understood everything. The two of them looked at each other and saw a hint of understanding in each other's eyes. Back then, Li Qinshu had disregarded her status and married a poor boy. That was a well-known joke in the upper class. What was even more ridiculous was that the poor boy had a childhood sweetheart. That childhood sweetheart even gave birth to an illegitimate daughter for the poor boy. This matter had almost spread throughout the upper class of Lin City. Now, looking at Su Peijian's attitude, this woman was Su Chenghui's mistress back then. Madame Luo and Madame Song looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. It was normal for the mistress to be at odds with the legal wife. They just didn't know what this mistress had done to annoy the eldest daughter of the Su family. Madame Luo and Madame Song were both smart people. Even if they had never been in the business world, they knew that their husbands usually interacted with people, and they were quite familiar with the situation in Lin City. Since Su Peijian wanted to vent her anger, they naturally had to help her vent her anger. On the other end, Xiang Kaiping heard Su Peijian's words. Not only did her expression not relax, but it also became even uglier. Qing Sang doesn't have a sister like you. Don't try to make connections. Of course, Su Peijian didn't want to acknowledge Su Qing Sang as a sister. However, not wanting to acknowledge her was different from Xiang Kaiping's direct words. Annie, I don't think you have the right to decide for Qing whether to acknowledge me or not. After all, my relationship with Qing is not something you can deny just because you want to. Xiang Kaiping stood still and looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song. She frowned slightly. Move aside. Hey, the boss isn't here yet. Auntie, don't rush. Su Peixian glanced at the shop assistant. Why? Is your boss so arrogant now? I'm here with Annie Luo and Annie Song. Can't he come and greet us? Miss Su, what are you talking about? The boss is coming. As they spoke, a lean, middle-aged man walked out from behind. I was wondering who it was. So it's Miss Su, and Madame Luo and Madame Song. Let me know if you need anything. I'll just bring it to your door. The boss had been in the jade business in Lin City for a long time and was quite familiar with Su Chenghui. He was more willing to give face to Old Master Li. Chapter 385. Xiang Caiping's expression darkened. She no longer had any intention of buying the jade pendant. She tried to break free from Madame Luo and Madame Song. Madame Luo and Madame Song's hands were clinging tightly to her arm. What are you doing? Not only was Xiang Caiping's expression dark, but her voice was also cold. She looked at Su Peixian, feeling that this girl was too annoying. Asked them to move. Annie, look, the boss is here. Don't you want it? Why don't you buy it? Su Peixian's mocking tone made people feel uncomfortable. Xiang Kaiping didn't want to buy it in the first place. This made her even angrier. Su Peixian, don't be like this. Auntie, look at you. How am I being like this? Didn't I say I would give it to you? Don't rush. I don't need you to give it to me. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peixian. It had nothing to do with her whether she was ugly or not. However, Su Chenghui had been such a gentleman when he was young, and now he had a daughter like this. Xiang Kaiping was truly emotional. Apart from feeling emotional, she also wanted to educate Su Peixian. Miss Su, as someone who has lived a few more years than you, I still want to give you some advice. You can't just look at the surface. Some people, some things, you don't understand, so don't say anything. Su Peixian didn't expect that one day she would be taught a lesson by a mistress like Xiang Kaiping. What did you say? Xiang Kaiping looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song coldly. She hadn't taken care of herself in the past few years, so she looked older than them. However, Madame Luo and Madame Song couldn't help but let go of her. Xiang Kaiping looked at the jade pendant on the counter. Boss, your staff just said that this jade pendant was discounted for 440,000 yuan. I don't like this number. I bought this jade Buddha as a gift. Just tell me if you can sell it for 390,000 yuan. If you can, I'll swipe my card now. The boss was stunned and looked at Xiang Kaiping. This jade pendant was indeed of good quality. However, he didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to be so straightforward. You can't sell it? Never mind then. Xiang Kaiping liked the jade Buddha very much, but it wasn't as if he couldn't get it. In fact, the price of 390,000 could still buy some good things. Excuse me. Yes, I can. It can be sold. After saying that, the boss wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead. You are Miss Su's friend. Of course I can sell at this price. Xiang Kaiping was about to pay by card, but she paused for a moment because of the owner's words. Sell if you can. If you can't sell it, then don't. I don't need to give face to anyone. It was not right for the boss to say yes or no. Su Peixian and the other two stood there without moving. They didn't speak at this time. They didn't plan to speak for the time being. Looks like I can't. Since this was the case. If that's the case, I won't be able to do business. Xiang Caiping's expression was indifferent. She had no intention of staying. He turned around and walked out. Madame Luo and Madame Luo glanced at Su Peixian, obviously waiting for her reaction. Su Peixian looked at Xiang Caiping's back and laughed coldly. If you can't afford it, just say it. Why do you have to say that you don't want to give me face? She turned to look at the boss of Bogu Zhai. Boss, you don't have to give me face. Just tell this Annie directly. Are you able to sell it or not? Miss Su, look at what you're saying. The boss finally saw through it. Su Peixian didn't get along with that woman just now. He had been in this business for a long time. His eyes were very sharp. That woman just now, he was afraid that she could really afford it. But he didn't want to offend Su Peixian. He thought about it. He came out from behind the counter and walked in front of Xiang Kaiping. "Madam, if you really want it, don't care whose face it is. What do you think? Just 390,000. If you want it, I'll have someone wrap it up for you." Xiang Kaiping wanted to leave at first, but seeing the boss's attitude, she wasn't an unreasonable person. "Boss, have you thought it through? This isn't a matter of giving face or not. Are you sure you can sell it?" Yes, of course. It would be a fool not to do a business worth hundreds of thousands." The boss waved his hand and signaled for the clerk to wrap up the Jade Buddha. "Look, are you going to swipe it or transfer it? I'm old. I don't know how to use those transfer tools. Just swipe it." After saying this, Xiang Kaiping followed the clerk to swipe her card. At this point, both Su Peijian and Madame Luo could see it. So Xiang Kaiping was really rich? Madame Luo and Madame Song were fine. This was someone else's family business, and they couldn't interfere. But Su Peijian's expression didn't look too good. She remembered that she had heard Li Qinxue mention it once. Su Qingshang's mother was just an ordinary person. So what did it mean for her to buy such an expensive jade pendant with her status? Su Peijian suddenly felt gloomy. She felt that Su Chenghui might have given Xiang Kaiping money without her knowing. It meant that he didn't feel bad spending other people's money. Otherwise, how could he be so generous? Xiang Kaiping didn't know what Su Peijian was thinking. After swiping her card, she took the jade pendant from the clerk's hand. The boss finally realized what had happened. He had heard about what had happened from the clerk in the shop. He glanced at the clerk again. The clerk's face was pale, and it was obvious that she regretted her poor judgment. After all, now that the boss was here, the commission from buying the jade pendant had nothing to do with her. The boss glared at the clerk. He suddenly felt that this clerk of Bogu Zhai needed more training. Seeing that Xiang Kaiping was about to leave with the jade pendant, he signaled for the clerk to take out a bracelet that was priced at about 60,000. "Madam, look, our clerk's attitude was not very good just now. He neglected you. The quality of this jade pendant is not bad. We'll give it to you as a gift. Please accept it. Next time you want something, come to Bogu Zhai again." Xiang Kaiping glanced at the box in the boss's hand. Compared to Su Peijian, the boss was much more observant. "Thank you." She accepted the jade pendant from the clerk's hand graciously. This way, she had gotten a bargain. "Next time I like something, I'll come again." After saying this, Xiang Kaiping turned around and walked out. If Su Peijian had only been guessing whether Su Chenghui had given money to Xiang Kaiping, now the boss's actions confirmed her suspicions. As soon as the woman swiped her card, the boss gave her a bracelet. What did it mean? It meant that the woman had swiped a card from someone the boss knew. She was overthinking and was certain that there was something going on between Xiang Kaiping and Su Chenghui. Chapter 386. However, she still cared about her reputation. She couldn't start a fight with Xiang Kaiping here. The only thing he could do now was to slowly think of a way to teach this woman a lesson. Su Peijian was still thinking about how to teach that woman a lesson. Madame Luo, who had been watching the show from the side, suddenly let out a cry of surprise. "What's wrong, Auntie? The necklace I was wearing just now is gone." As Madame Luo spoke, Xiang Kaiping had already walked to the door. Xiang Kaiping heard her scream, but she didn't stop. "Wasn't your necklace here just now?" Mrs. Song quickly said. "I saw it just now." "Yes. Where's my necklace?" Madame Luo's face was full of anxiety. She lowered her head and looked around, but she couldn't find it. "Look again. Wasn't this necklace given to you by your old Luo? How about millions?" "That's right." Madame Luo panicked. She searched her body a few times and even her pockets, but there was nothing. She panicked and said without thinking, "Did you see me wearing it just now? Did he enter the store? I didn't even notice. Could have fallen in the car." Su Peijian looked at the anxious look on Madame Luo's face. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Xiang Kaiping had already walked out of Bogu Zhai. She suddenly used an extremely soft voice and spoke carelessly. "Auntie, you were standing with that lady just now. Did you accidentally fall on her?" Su Peijian said that she accidentally dropped it there, but the hidden meaning in her words was that Xiang Kaiping had taken it. The boss of Bogu Zhai watched this sudden turn of events without saying a word. The grudges between these people were not something a jade shop owner like him could interfere with. Madame Song seemed to have been reminded of something. Ah, that's right. She was standing so close just now. Who knows if she accidentally dropped it into her bag. Xiang Kaiping was carrying a huge bag. The label of a well-known wool brand was very eye-catching. Su Peijian didn't say anything else after that. Madame Luo and Madame Song went out together, blocking Xiang Caiping's way. Xiang Caiping's mood had been affected by the appearance of Su Peijian and the others. But now, he had bought the jade pendant that he wanted to give to his daughter. She was in a good mood. There was a subway station nearby, but she wanted to take a taxi back. Anyway, it's not far. However, before she could reach the taxi, her path was blocked by someone. Let me have a look at your bag. Madame Luo spoke rather rudely. Xiang Kaiping frowned, clutched the two bags in her hands tightly, and took a step back. What do you mean? What do you mean? Madame Luo's necklace was her favorite necklace. Her husband had given it to her on her birthday. Now that she saw Xiang Kaiping carrying the bag, she couldn't help but wonder if she had dropped it. I lost my necklace. I suspect it fell into your bag. Bring it over and let me check it. Just now, Madame Luo and Madame Song had each grabbed her hand and refused to let her go. Xiang Kaiping was already quite unhappy. That would be even more outrageous for these two. Was he implying that she had taken something? Xiang Caiping's face darkened. She looked very gloomy. Get out of my way. I won't have what you want in this bag. If you don't let me see it, then you have a guilty conscience. Seeing her like this, Madame Luo felt that she was even more suspicious. Don't think that you are rich just because you bought a jade pendant and spent hundreds of thousands. Let me tell you, my necklace is worth millions. If you're smart, hurry up and take it out. Otherwise, I will call the police. Call the police. Xiang Kaiping wanted to laugh. If you want to call the police, go ahead. I said it. I didn't take it. What a rude attitude. Madame Luo didn't want to be polite. She and Li Qinxue had a good personal relationship. Since this woman was the mistress from back then, she would teach her a lesson and help Li Qinxue vent her anger. Do you think you didn't take it just because you said you didn't? Bring me the bag. I want to check it. Sorry. You don't have the right. Xiang Kaiping had been doing business for a few years. What kind of people hadn't she seen? She naturally understood a person like Madame Luo. She bullied the weak and feared the strong. To put it bluntly, she was just a fox pretending to be a tiger. I don't have the right. Madame Luo didn't even care that she was on the road. I lost my necklace. I suspect that it fell in your hands. If you don't let me see it, you must be up to no good. Madame Luo was too sharp and aggressive. Xiang Caiping's expression was calm and unhurried. Madame Song glanced at her from the side and took a step forward. Madam, since you really didn't take the necklace, why don't you let us check it? We're just taking a look. Nothing will happen. Isn't it more suspicious for you to hide it from us like this? Xiang Kaiping glanced at Madame Song coldly. She had no doubt that these two women were deliberately making things difficult for her. She looked at Su Peijian, who had been watching from the side without saying a word. Speaking of which, Miss Su must have been instigating this. She really didn't like this girl. She was sharp, petty, and not magnanimous. More importantly, she had the heart but not the guts. She obviously didn't get along with her, but she didn't come forward herself. Instead, she pushed the other two elders who could almost be her mother. Li Qinxue was such a capable person. How could she raise such a daughter? Thinking about it, she found it really interesting. I will say it again, I didn't take it. My bag is fine too. My bag is fine too. I don't think I will have what you want. Please move aside. She had put the jade pendant and the jade bracelet into her bag carefully. One of the two bags was for knitting a scarf for Su Qingsang, and the other was for Hua Jinyao. The knitting was secondary. She didn't want these people to touch her things. Madame Luo didn't expect Xiang Kaiping to be so rude. She was annoyed. I think it fell in your bag. Give it to me. Xiang Kaiping didn't expect that Madame Luo would dare to hit her. Instinctively, she tried to protect her bag and put it behind her. Unexpectedly, Madame Song saw it and came forward to help. Xiang Kaiping panicked and dodged to the side. She had suffered a lot when she was young, so she was naturally stronger than Madame Luo and Madame Song. However, the two of them were standing on the side of the road. She looked at Madame Luo's outstretched hand and dodged to the middle of the road without thinking. It was not rush hour, but there were still many cars on the road. Behind them, a car happened to be driving in their direction. Chapter 387. Even Su Peijian was stunned by the sudden turn of events. However, the women didn't react at all. They just stared at Xiang Kaiping blankly, even forgetting to reach out to help her. Under the shocked gazes of the three of them, Xiang Kaiping's body was sent flying by the car. The scene seemed to freeze at that moment. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. Su Peijian watched the woman's body fly. Then she fell. The moment Xiang Kaiping fell, she was still thinking about the jade pendant she had bought for her daughter. She held the bag in her hands tightly. The bag flew out, and her body hit a telephone pole by the side of the road. Then she fell. With a screech, Xiang Kaiping's body rolled on the ground, then came to a complete stop. The driver got out of the car. Su Peijian and the others seemed to have finally come to their senses and went forward together. Su Peijian looked at Xiang Kaiping lying in a pool of blood. There was only one thought in her mind. She couldn't be dead, could she? When Hu Jinyao received the news and rushed to the hospital, Xiang Kaiping was already in the operating room. In the corridor, other than Madame Luo and Madame Song, Su Peijian was also there. When he saw her, Hu Jinyao slightly narrowed his eyes. His aura was shocking, and Su Peijian couldn't help but shrink back. Su Chenghui also rushed over after receiving the news. He was in a meeting and came immediately after receiving the news. When he saw the guilty faces of Madame Luo and Madame Song, he was not in the mood to greet them. He only looked at Su Peijian. Peijian, what happened? He wasn't the only one who wanted to know. Hu Jinyao also wanted to know. He took a few steps forward and stood in front of Su Peijian. His cold eyes swept over her face without any warmth. I don't know either. Su Peijian was a little spoiled and a little willful. She had never taken anyone's life. Now that Xiang Kaiping had been hit by a car and her life was uncertain, she began to feel afraid. Dad, I really don't know. Enough. Su Chenghui's expression was a little ugly. It was rare for him to be so strict with Su Peijian. Tell me, what happened? If she didn't know, how could she have sent Xiang Kaiping to the hospital? Su Peijian was Su Chenghui's biological daughter. If she was so frightened, Madame Luo and Madame Song were even more afraid to speak. Hu Jinyao took a step forward and stood beside Su Chenghui. He stared at Su Peijian's face with sharp eyes. Miss Su, I suggest that you speak clearly. After all, there are surveillance cameras at the place where you just had a car accident. I just need to look at the surveillance, and I can see everything. Su Peijian was even more afraid now. She swallowed and looked at her father and Hu Jinyao's gloomy faces. She told them what had happened in a very low voice. Of course, she simplified some things as much as possible. But how smart was Hu Jinyao? Just by listening to a few words, one could deduce half of the cause and effect. Stop talking about him. Even Su Chenghui could tell. Based on what happened today, it was obvious that Su Peijian wanted to make life difficult for Xiang Kaiping. Madame Luo and Madame Song were merely her helpers. After listening to the scene of Xiang Kaiping being hit by the car, Hu Jinyao was stunned. Su Chenghui couldn't take it anymore. He raised his hand and slapped Su Peijian's face. Su Peijian was stunned by the loud and heavy slap. Her face quickly swelled up. She covered her face and didn't dare to come back to her senses for a long time. Dad, you hit me? Yes, I hit you. Su Chenghui was very angry. He only felt a terrible headache. His head was buzzing. Su Peijian didn't dare to speak. Tears fell from the corners of her eyes. Half of it was because of the pain, and the other half was because she felt wronged. How dare Su Chenghui slap her in front of so many people? The humiliation was enough to make her cry. What did I say to you? What did I say to you? He had repeatedly told her to stay away from Xiang Kaiping and not to provoke her. But Su Peijian? She didn't listen to him at all. Instead, she turned a deaf ear to his words. How could he not be angry? Su Chenghui was so angry that his chest rose and fell violently. The huge anger made him completely lose his cool. Not only was he angry, but he was also disappointed and guilty. If Xiang Kaiping woke up one day and found out that it was Su Peijian who caused her car accident, what would she do? Su Chenghui didn't dare to think about it. Compared to his agitated self, Hu Jinyao was much calmer. Su Peijian naturally wanted to teach her a lesson. However, Su Chenghui's slap made him not rush to teach Su Peijian a lesson. His slender legs took a step forward, his tall body standing in front of Madame Luo and Madame Song. Madame Luo? Madame Song? Madame Luo and Madame Song were ordinary rich ladies. They usually went shopping, dressed up, and socialized with their husbands. They went to the spa and gossiped. Even if they looked down on people from a certain class, they wouldn't think of harming others. Now that Xiang Kaiping was in a car accident, both of them were frightened. Hu Jinyao's cold gaze suddenly swept over them. Their bodies trembled like leaves in the wind. Madams, I really didn't know that Hu Jinyao's mother-in-law would go and take a necklace worth millions from you. Madame Luo and Madame Song trembled even more. They didn't dare to respond to Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao stared at their frightened faces. He didn't plan to let it go just like that. Madame Xiang Kaiping is my wife's mother, my mother-in-law. Are you sure that she took your necklace? No, no, no. The two of them shook their heads quickly and snuggled up to each other tightly, almost hugging each other. Hu Jinyao snorted. That's good. After all, it's better to get to the bottom of this. Madams, don't you think so? Of course. Of course. Madame Luo and Madame Song were frightened. Hu Jinyao didn't think it was enough. Madame Luo, I remember that your family runs a department store business, right? Yes. Madame Luo didn't understand what Hu Jinyao wanted. The washing department store, Hu Jinyao added. Madame Luo's face turned even paler. Madame Song's family runs a retail and electronics business? Hu Jinyao had seen them at the party. Madame Song looked at Hu Jinyao with a pale face. What do you mean, President Hua? What did he mean? Hu Jinyao took out his phone and dialed a few numbers. He looked at Madame Luo and Madame Song on the phone. It's me. From now on, I will buy the shares of the washing department store and Kusong Group. Chapter 388. As soon as he said that, Madame Song and Madame Luo's bodies went limp and they fell to the ground. They looked at Hu Jinyao in disbelief. Madame Luo took a long time to gather her courage. Hua, President Hua, you can't do this. If that person and her family knew about this, her good days would come to an end. She was really nervous, so nervous that her voice began to tremble. There's nothing I can't do. Hu Jinyao hung up the phone, his expression extremely cold. He looked down at the two of them, his eyes emotionless. Everyone has to bear the consequences of their actions. You're not children anymore, are you? Big drops of sweat rolled down Madame Song's forehead. Madame Luo thought about the anger she might have toward her husband when she got home. Her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Hu Jinyao didn't look at the two people on the ground. He went straight to Su Peijian, who was still crying and had a pale face. He glanced at Su Peijian's face. The others had already packed up. She was the only one left now. You. Su Peijian had heard what Hu Jinyao said. She couldn't believe that Hu Jinyao would really do that, just because of a small dispute. What about me? Hu Jinyao was patient with Su Qingsang, but it didn't mean that he was patient with others. Su Chenghui frowned. Under Hu Jinyao's dark gaze, he discreetly stepped in front of Su Peijian. Jinyao, if there's anything, wait for Kaiping to come out. Hu Jinyao curled his lips slightly and looked at Su Chenghui mockingly. Dad, are you saying that I should just let go? I've already hit her. When Su Chenghui said this, he didn't sound very confident. Hu Jinyao smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes at all. If Su Qingsang were here, she would know how rare it was to see Hu Jinyao, who was always smiling in front of her. Dad, what I mean is she. He raised his hand and casually pointed in Su Peijian's direction. She caused Su Qingsang's mother to get into a car accident, and you think that a slap is enough? Su Peijian's body trembled at the meaning of his words. She instinctively stood beside Su Chenghui. Even though she had just been slapped by Su Chenghui didn't make her feel as scared as Hu Jinyao. Su Chenghui naturally felt his daughter's fear. He took a few steps to the side, half blocking Su Peijian's body. Jin Yao, that's not what I meant. I mean, there's nothing more important than Kaiping right now. Xiang Kaiping was still in the emergency room. Even if Hui Jinyao wanted to punish Su Peijian, he would have to wait until she woke up. That's not a conflict. Hui Jinyao raised his chin, and his eyes were sharp. The surgery won't end so soon anyway. I just happen to have time to settle the accounts. Jinyao, I'm afraid Qingseng won't agree with your decision, right? Qingseng is not here now. Why? Can't I make the decision for you? That's not what I mean. What do you mean, Dad? Hui Jinyao took a step forward and stood in front of Su Changwei. Su Changwei was not short. He was 8 meters tall. However, in front of Hui Jinyao, who was 8 meters tall, he was still a little less imposing. Hui Jinyao, I didn't say that this matter is over. But Kaiping is still in the operating room. You. Before he could finish his words, a nurse had already come out. Su Qinghui and Hui Jinyao thought that the surgery was over. They immediately went forward to ask the nurse about the situation. The nurse understood their feelings and explained briefly. The surgery is not over yet. The patient is bleeding heavily. We're going to blood bank to get type O blood now. The nurse was about to run to get the plasma as she spoke. Hui Jinyao looked at the nurse's face. He asked worriedly, "Do you have enough blood in the blood bank?" "Yes. Our hospital has more than enough type O blood." After saying this, the nurse ran away. Hui Jinyao was not completely relieved, but he was more or less relieved. He turned to look at Su Qinghui and found that his expression was a little strange. He thought that he was worried about Xiang Kaiping and sneered. "I've already called Qingseng to inform her." "Dad, I really want to know how you plan to explain to Qingseng when she comes back. Didn't he stop him from punishing Su Peijian now? He didn't believe that he could stop him for a while, but he couldn't stop him forever. I don't need to explain this matter to Qingseng. I only need to explain to Xiang Kaiping." Su Qinghui was very worried about Xiang Kaiping now. Not only was he worried, but he also blamed himself. He didn't expect that he couldn't stop Su Peijian from causing trouble for Xiang Kaiping. However, under the current situation, he couldn't let Hui Jinyao deal with Su Peijian first. After all, Su Peijian was Xiang Caiping's daughter, her biological daughter. "Is that so?" Hui Jinyao sneered and looked at Su Peijian, who was still pale. "I hope you can say the same thing when Qingseng comes back." "Jinyao, we're family. Is it a family?" Hui Jinyao interrupted him rudely and glanced in Su Peijian's direction. "Can you make Qingsong's mother get into a car accident just because we're family?" Su Peijian was already guilty and didn't dare to say anything, but Hui Jinyao's words made her feel very unconvinced. I didn't do it on purpose." Hui Jinyao's eyes were like arrows. "You made her get into a car accident without doing it on purpose. Then if you did it on purpose, wouldn't you want to kill her?" Su Peijian still wanted to say something, but Su Changhui glared at her and said, "Shut up." Su Peijian didn't dare to say anything. The nurse came back with the typo blood and rushed into the operating room. Hui Jinyao was in no mood to pay attention to Su Peijian. He rushed over from the company and had a lot of things to deal with. His phone didn't stop ringing. He answered a few calls. Not long after, his assistant came over with a laptop and a pile of documents. Hui Jinyao was dealing with work in the corridor when his phone rang again. He was about to hang up, but quickly picked up when he saw that it was Su Qingseng. "Qingseng, how's my mother?" Su Qingseng's voice was full of panic. "I've already bought the plane ticket. It'll take off in half an hour. Tell me first, how's my mother?" "Mom is still in surgery." Hui Jinyao glanced at the operating room. "I don't know the details yet. We'll only know when the doctor comes out. Why did she get into a car accident?" Su Qingseng's face was full of anxiety. "And why is she still in surgery? Hasn't it been a long time?" "Yes. The situation might be a little complicated." Chapter 389. Hui Jinyao didn't see it with his own eyes. According to the situation at the time, Xiang Caiping's body was sent flying and then fell to the ground. It was likely that her internal organs were damaged. He just didn't know where he fell. He didn't know much about this, so he didn't know what would happen. Then, Su Qingseng used to be a doctor, so she was used to calming the patient's family down. But when it really happened to her, she realized that she couldn't stay calm at all. Calm down first. He decided to take a nap after boarding the plane. I'll send someone to pick you up. You don't have to worry. I believe Mom will be fine. She couldn't calm down or believe him. She had just acknowledged Xiang Kaiping as her mother, and she had just developed a mother-daughter relationship with her. She thought she could make up for the motherly love she had missed for the past 20 years. But now, she was afraid that she would lose the motherly love that she had just received. Hearing Su Qingsang's panicked voice, Hua Jinyao's heart ached slightly. He could understand Su Qingsang. It was like a drowning man catching a piece of driftwood. Those who had lost their loved ones would never be willing to lose their loved ones again. Thinking of the blow Su Qingsang would suffer if something really happened to Xiang Kaiping, he couldn't find a way to comfort her. He heard a rustling sound. Su Qingsang seemed to have taken the phone away from her. Hua Jinyao took a deep breath and was about to comfort her when he heard a male voice on the other end of the phone. "Junior sister, don't be like this. I believe Annie will be fine." Hua Jinyao's hand, which was holding the phone, froze. "Zhuo Hongchun? It's him, right? Why did he go to Song City?" Su Qingsang didn't say anything, but just shook her head. "Junior Marshall's sister, don't be like this. Auntie is still waiting for you to take care of her." Su Qingsang glanced at him, thought about his words, and finally nodded. "That's more like it. Zhuo Hongchun had a surgery with the people from Song City Central Hospital today. As soon as she finished the surgery, she saw Su Qingsang coming to the hospital office in a panic to ask for leave, saying that she wanted to go back to Lin City. It was the first time he had seen such an expression on Su Qingsang's face. After asking, he found out that something had happened to Su Qingsang's mother. He knew that Su Qingsang was an illegitimate daughter and had always thought that she didn't have a mother by her side. But now, he knew that wasn't the case. Taking off his scrubs, he accompanied her to the airport. He had planned to go back with Su Qingsang. However, he was one of the backbone this time, and Su Qingsang had left. He couldn't be so willful. "Senior brother, I'm fine. Thanks for driving me here. I'll board the plane myself later." "Then be careful." Zhuo Hongchun was still very worried. However, it was obvious that Su Qingsang wanted to be alone. "You can go back. I'm going in now." Su Qingsang took the suitcase from Zhuo Hongchun's hand and was about to enter the gate when she realized that her phone was still on. She was stunned for a moment, but she couldn't care about anything else now. "Jinyao, I'm here." Hua Jinyao hadn't hung up the phone, so naturally, he heard the conversation between Su Qingsang and Zhuo Hongchun. He wasn't jealous, but he definitely felt a little uncomfortable. Zhuo Hongchun's intentions were too obvious. Everyone could see it. "Get on the plane first and get a good night's sleep. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it when you come back." Su Qingsang didn't say anything. In fact, it was really difficult to calm down at a time like this. "Qingsang, listen to me." Hua Jinyao's voice was very calm. "Our mother is still waiting for you to take care of her. If you keep this attitude, even if you come back, you won't be able to take good care of our mother." Strangely, the same words that Zhuo Hongchun had said just now didn't calm her down as much as Hua Jinyao did now. She nodded lightly and suppressed the tears in her eyes. "I know. Thank you, Hua Jinyao." She looked at the people queuing up in front of her, put away her phone, and walked into the gate. When Hua Jinyao called, Su Changwei was also there. Mrs. Song was no longer there. Mrs. Luo had fainted and asked someone to help her to see a doctor. Su Peijian wanted to leave, but couldn't. She was ordered by Su Changwei to stay there. She could only sit on the other side of the bench in a daze, not moving. Su Changwei heard Hua Jinyao's words. The look in his eyes was very complicated. Su Qingsang was coming back to take care of Xiang Kaiping. In fact, the person who should be taking care of Xiang Kaiping at this time should be Su Peijian. He looked at Su Peijian with some disappointment in his eyes. He had been working hard to give the best to Su Peijian. He had been educating Su Peijian. Since she was in high school, he had brought her with him and asked her to help with some business matters. He had also been very diligent in cultivating Su Peijian. She had been dancing, playing piano, calligraphy, and playing chess since she was a child. Su Peijian was also smart and attentive. However, she had learned so much, but he had forgotten to give her a good personality. He had always felt that as long as he was there, he would always be able to protect Su Peijian. She was a girl, so what if she was a little spoiled? Couldn't his daughter be a little spoiled? However, he didn't expect so many things to happen later. Now, Su Peijian had a conflict with Xiang Kaiping. Not only did the conflict happen, but Xiang Kaiping was also hurt. Su Qingwei really couldn't tell what he was feeling. If he could, he actually wanted to teach Su Peijian a lesson. However, he was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel bad if she knew. After struggling for a while, Su Qinghui's expression became a little ugly. Hu Jinyao didn't know that Su Qinghui's ugly expression was because of these struggles. He saw that Su Qinghui still had some conscience and knew that he was worried about Xiang Kaiping. He didn't care about him for the time being. He planned to deal with these business matters first, and when Su Qingseng came back, he could accompany her. 2 hours later, Xiang Kaiping finally came out of the operating room. At the same time, Su Qingsang's plane had also landed in Lin City. Hu Jinyao had already arranged for someone to pick her up. Now, he was more concerned about Xiang Kaiping. "Doctor, how is my mother?" The spleen ruptured and caused a lot of bleeding. In addition, her lumbar vertebra was fractured, and she hit her head. She has a slight concussion, right? Did the patient hurt her lumbar vertebra before? Yes. Hu Jinyao remembered the fall in Rong City. At that time, he thought that Xiang Kaiping was faking it, but he didn't expect that it was a real fall. Then be careful next time. We have already corrected her bones through surgery. But for the rest of the time, it's best that the patient doesn't move. She needs to rest in bed. Then, she will slowly undergo rehabilitation. Okay, I understand. Hu Jinyao nodded, but he was still a little worried. It would take 100 days to recover from an injury, not to mention that Xiang Kaiping was not young anymore. After the fall last time, he didn't pay attention to it anymore, nor did he ask about it. Chapter 390. Hearing that, Su Changwei almost couldn't stand still. Xiang Kaiping would be paralyzed? He looked at the doctor nervously, for fear that he would say something bad. She won't be paralyzed. However, I'm afraid that the patient won't be able to exert force on her lumbar spine for a long time. She'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. The doctor understood the family's concerns. Rehabilitation will be good in the future. It won't affect her movements. But you still have to be careful. After all, she's not young anymore. If the rehabilitation is not good, I'm afraid that the disease will be permanent. Okay, we'll be careful. Hu Jinyao began to plan to hire professional care workers, nutritionists, and physiotherapists. When the patient was in the car accident, she fell on her head. We've already examined her. Other than a concussion, there was no intracranial bleeding. It shouldn't be a big problem. The most serious is the hemorrhage caused by the rupture of the spleen. The patient also went into shock several times during the surgery because of the hemorrhage. After the surgery, we've repaired the ruptured spleen. However, the body is weak because of the hemorrhage. It will take some time to recover. Good doctor, does that mean that she has no other problems now? Not for the time being. The patient's anesthesia hasn't worn off yet. When she wakes up, you can call us for a detailed examination. After all, a head injury could be serious or minor. Although the examination had been done, the results would only be known when the patient woke up. Thank you, doctor. Hu Jinyao took care of the rest. He didn't let Su Changwei get involved at all. When Su Qingsang arrived at the hospital, Xiang Kaiping was already in the ward. Hu Jinyao was sitting not far from the bed. There was a laptop in front of him, and a pile of reports and documents beside him. He seemed to be very busy. Yang Wenchang stood behind her with a few documents in his hand, obviously waiting for Hu Jinyao to sign. Jinyao? Wife. Hu Jinyao saw her and stood up immediately. Su Qingsang didn't look at him, but rushed to the bed. How's my mother? How is she? Xiang Caiping's face was pale, and she lay motionless on the bed. Su Qingsang's eyes were red. She really wished that she was the one who got into the car accident. Hu Jinyao signed the documents in his hand and handed them to Yang Wenchang, gesturing for him to leave. After Yang Wenchang left with the documents, he stepped forward and stood in front of Su Qingsang. Your mom is fine for now. Hu Jinyao knew what she was thinking and repeated the doctor's words. That's the situation. The anesthetic hasn't worn off yet. Plus, he lost too much blood before, so he might only wake up tomorrow. Excessive blood loss? Did you get a blood transfusion? I lost 600 cc. 600? Su Qing-sang looked at Xiang Kaiping, her eyes full of heartache. What about now? Are you all right now? Sort of. Rehabilitation is very important. Hua Jinyao didn't intend to hide it from her, so he told her about the problem with Xiang Caiping's lumbar spine. Su Qing-sang looked guilty. It's all my fault. He should have paid more attention to it when he was in Rong City. I shouldn't have come back when my mom asked me to take care of her. What if she falls ill? Don't worry. It'll be fine. Hua Jinyao held her hand tightly. You didn't know her identity at that time, did you? Furthermore, we will hire the best physiotherapist and doctor to treat him. I think he'll be fine. Su Qing-sang didn't say anything but nodded vigorously. Hua Jinyao held her hand, only to find that it was very cold. He felt a little sad and helpless. He held her hand tightly and put it in his arms. Your hand is so cold. Didn't Wen Chong turn on the air conditioner when he went to pick you up? He did. Su Qing-sang shook her head, her eyes still on Xiang Kaiping. I just feel uneasy. Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. Su Qing-sang was in a bad mood, so she opened the car window for some fresh air. However, her hands and face were cold from the wind. Reaching out, he pulled her body into his embrace. He hugged her tightly and forcefully. Wife, you don't need to feel uneasy. There's no need to be unsettled. You're not alone. You have me. Su Qing-sang didn't look up. Her face was still pressed against his chest. She looked at Xiang Kaiping. Why do you think my mom has such a hard life? In the first half of her life, her lover was taken away and separated from her own flesh and blood. In the second half of her life, she thought she could finally enjoy some happiness. However, something like this happened. Hua Jinyao, I really wish that I was the one who got into the car accident. That way, wife. Hua Jinyao suddenly held her shoulders and made her look into his eyes. Don't say things like that. Su Qing-sang looked at him blankly. Hua Jinyao's expression was quite serious and serious. Your mom is very important to you, but you're also very important to me. Su Qing-sang bit her lip and couldn't find her voice for a long time. Finally, she nodded gently. I understand. Wife, I hope you understand. You can call me selfish or cold-blooded, but I'm really glad that you weren't the one who got into an accident. Otherwise, Hua Jinyao couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't do something crazy. Su Qing-sang was shocked by his expression. Her uneasy heart calmed down a lot. She reached out and hugged Hua Jinyao. She looked at Xiang Kaiping, whose face was as pale as a sheet. Hua Jinyao, I won't say this anymore. I just hope that my mom will be fine now. Don't worry. She'll be fine. I hope so. Su Qing-sang closed her eyes. Studying in Song City for more than a week had been a very happy thing. After all, she could exchange ideas and learn from so many seniors. But now, all that happiness had turned into self-blame. She was very regretful and upset. If she had known, she wouldn't have gone to Song City. If she hadn't gone, Xiang Kaiping might have been fine. Thinking of this, Su Qing-sang suddenly let go. She took a step back and looked at Hua Jinyao. By the way, where's the person who hit my mom? Where is he? Hua Jinyao frowned and thought about what to say. What's wrong? Escaped? You didn't catch him? Su Qing-sang only heard Hua Jinyao say that Xiang Kaiping was hit by a car. She didn't say who hit her. I've already sent that person to the traffic police. Hua Jinyao's voice was calm. Thinking of Su Peijian, he decided to tell her about it. In fact, although your mom got into a car accident because that person drove a little too fast, you can't completely blame him. But the person who caused her car accident can't be completely blamed on that person. What do you mean? Su Qing-sang suddenly became nervous. Hua Jinyao didn't hide anything and told her about Su Peijian. He was objective. When Xiang Caiping's surgery was over, he asked someone to pull up the surveillance video. Chapter 391. That's how it is. Su Peijian? Su Qing-sang's face darkened. Her lips were pursed into a straight line, and there was obvious anger in her clear, watery eyes. It's good that you're back. Your father stopped me from dealing with Su Peijian just now. Tell me how you want to punish her. In fact, Su Peijian didn't do anything. It had always been Madame Luo and Madame Song who did the dirty work, even though the ones who did it were Madame Luo and Madame Song. However, if Su Peijian hadn't played trick behind the scenes, the two of them wouldn't have made things difficult for Xiang Kaiping. In the end, it was all because of Su Peijian. Su Qingsang didn't know. In fact, she had just promised Li Qianxue to leave Lin City. She could empathize with Su Peijian. She had been slapped by Xiang Kaiping, and there was no way she could get over it. However, she should not have harmed Xiang Kaiping. Su Qingsang felt a little conflicted. Before she could figure out what kind of price to make Su Peijian pay, someone knocked on the door of the ward. The man who came in was Su Chenghui. He was carrying 2 bags in his hands. He paused for a moment when he saw Su Qingsang, but he wasn't surprised. He left the moment Xiang Kaiping was out of danger. Hu Jinyao thought that he left because he was too ashamed to face Xiang Kaiping. He didn't expect that he went to buy dinner. It's getting late. You guys should eat something. Hu Jinyao stood still. Su Qingsang looked at Su Chenghui, her biological father, who had never done anything for her. No need. Su Qingsang's voice was cold. I don't want to eat the food you give me. Qingsang. Su Chenghui was stunned. He didn't expect that. Su Qingsang's expression did not change. Where's Su Peijian? Hiding after getting into trouble? Su Chenghui frowned at her words. What do you mean? She's also tired, so I asked her to go back and rest. Tired? Why is she tired? Su Qingsang stared at Su Chenghui's face. Her eyes were sharp and full of hatred. How could she be tired? She took a step forward and stood in front of Su Chenghui. She doesn't have to do it herself. He didn't even need to move his mouth. Just one look, one expression, and someone will stand up for her. Stand up for her, right? Su Qingsang. Su Chenghui shouted in a low voice. Noticing Hu Jinyao's rather unfriendly gaze, he took a few deep breaths and said, Peijian didn't want this to happen. It was done by Madame Luo and Madame Song. Hu Jinyao had already punished them. You too. Their punishment is their business. Where's Su Peijian? No matter how good-tempered she was, she had a bottom line. Tell me, where's Su Peijian? Qingsang, no matter what, Peijian is your sister. Moreover, she now knew that she was wrong. Su Peijian is my sister and Xiang Kaiping is my mother. Su Qingsang raised her voice and glared at Su Chenghui coldly. What's more, Dad, ask yourself, did Su Peijian ever see me as her little sister? Does she really think of me as her sister? Su Chenghui was speechless. He couldn't say a word to Su Qingsang's question. Qingsang, let's not discuss this matter for now. But I believe that if your mother wakes up, she won't want you to deal with Peijian. After all, do you think my mother won't want me to deal with Su Peijian? Su Qingsang acted as if she had heard a joke. Dad, are you out of your mind? What reason did Xiang Kaiping have to forgive Su Peijian? I think I might have to remind you that in Japan, Su Peijian called me an illegitimate daughter, the daughter of a mistress. My mother slapped her in the face. I know that. That slap made Su Peijian do all those things. But Dad, look at your conscience. Is my mother a mistress? Who caused me to become an illegitimate daughter? Su Chenghui couldn't say a word. He had always thought that Su Qingsang was a good-tempered person. He didn't know that even a good-tempered person would lose her temper one day. Dad, I don't ask you to be nice to me. I don't ask you to be nice to my mother. You are married now and have your own family. You have a wife and children. I understand all that. But your family is family. Isn't my family my family? Su Peijian was slapped by my mother. Both you and Annie felt the same. You and Annie came to find me one by one. If you want to blame me, blame my mother. What about my mother? My mother was hit by a car because of Su Peijian. Does Su Peijian want to just let it go without paying any price? Su Qingsang's words were filled with anger. Even if Su Peijian wasn't the main person responsible. But she was still responsible, wasn't she? I've already hit her. Su Chenghui thought of the tears on Su Peijian's face when she came home and felt a little heartache. No matter how angry he was with Su Peijian, she was still his daughter who he had loved for so many years. I've really taught her a lesson. She knows she was wrong. Murderers also said they knew they were wrong after killing someone. Su Qingsang didn't intend to let it go just like that. But why does the law still sentence them? Qingsang, Su Chenghui didn't know where to start. He had a stomach full of words, but he couldn't say a word. Get out. I don't want to see you. Heartless. Unfaithful to Li Qianxue and Xiang Kaiping. Said he loved Xiang Kaiping, but married Li Qianxue. Said he loved Li Qianxue, but couldn't forget Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping was in trouble, but he couldn't even help her vent her anger. Su Qingsang didn't think so before, but now she really felt that her father was a scumbag. Qingsang, get out. Su Qingsang's voice was even higher than before. Neither my mother nor I want to see you. Su Chenghui didn't say anything. He raised the lunchbox in his hand and put it down again. He took one last look at Hu Jinyao and put the lunchbox on the table beside him. Qingsang, no matter how angry you are, you still have to eat. I'm sorry about your mother. Don't worry. I'll definitely teach Peijin a good lesson. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She didn't believe that Su Chenghui could bear to teach Su Peijin a lesson. But now she didn't want to lower herself to his level. Su Chenghui left, leaving only Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao in the ward. Su Qingsang looked at the lunchbox and didn't touch it. The sky outside darkened. Xiang Kaiping hadn't woken up yet. There were many tubes in her body. Su Qingsang felt a pang of heartache. She hadn't eaten lunch. After receiving the news, she rushed back as soon as she could. Now she was thirsty and hungry, but she had no appetite at all. Hu Jinyao stood beside her and put his arm around her shoulders, silently encouraging her. Sometimes I really hope that Su Chenghui isn't my father. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. His gaze was deep. In fact, Su Chenghui's actions today puzzled him again. Chapter 392. He was different from Su Qingsang, who had lost her mind because of anger. Hu Jinyao had been calm. He could tell that even though Su Chenghui had calmed down, he could still feel the anger in his heart. The anger towards Su Peijin. He believed that he meant it when he said he would teach Su Peijin a lesson. It wasn't fake, but if he could teach Su Peijin a lesson for Xiang Kaiping, and even his daughter, whom he had doted on for more than 20 years, why was he so cold to Su Qingsang, Xiang Caiping's daughter? The feeling that Hu Jinyao had felt before came again. There was a flash of doubt in the depths of his heart. Before he could think clearly, his phone rang. It was from Yang Wenchang. The driver had been arrested by the traffic police. But because Xiang Kaiping fell out of the car herself, she had to take the main responsibility. But the driver was also detained for dangerous driving. Hu Jinyao hung up the phone and told Su Qingsang about it. That man drove a little fast, but he didn't. The driver drove a little fast, but he wasn't speeding at that time. So there shouldn't be any more severe punishment than being detained for a few days and having his driver's license revoked. Su Qingsang didn't speak. She looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, I don't care what happens to those people now. I just want my mother to wake up soon. Mom will be fine. She will. Xiang Kaiping was a very good person. Good people would be rewarded. Hu Jinyao convinced Su Qingsang. She looked at the dinner Su Chenghui brought. If you put it in the room, you can smell it. Let's eat. He had asked Yang Wenchang to order food. It'll be a waste if we don't eat. Su Qingsang glanced at him. Was he afraid of wasting food? I don't want to eat the food he brought. Su Qingsang wasn't angry. If Su Chenghui still wanted to protect Su Peijin, she really couldn't eat the food he brought. I think you should eat. Hu Jinyao opened the lunchbox and took out the food inside. Think about it. Your mother is still unconscious. You can't do anything to your father. Why don't you take this opportunity to torture your father? Is it to avenge your mother? When he met Su Qingsang's disapproving gaze, he raised his hand. I'm telling the truth. Think about it. You should be tormenting your father with all your might right now. What's the point of asking him to deliver food? You should let him do other things like take care of your mother. And nonsense again. Who asked him to take care of my mother? Su Chenghui was afraid that Su Chenghui would only make things worse. Yes, our mom doesn't need him to take care of her. It's enough for us to take care of him. Hu Jinyao's words made Su Qingsang glare at him, but she was in a much better mood. She sat down by the bed and looked at Xiang Caiping's pale face. Her voice was very soft. My mother won't want him to take care of her. Xiang Caiping's love for Su Chenghui was so strong. How could she let him take care of her now that she hated him so much? Let's eat. Su Qing-sang had no appetite, but she still ate a little. After dinner, Su Qing-sang asked the doctor on duty about Xiang Saiping's medical history. He then asked for more details. The doctor on duty was surnamed Jiang. Dr. Jiang showed Su Qing-sang the list. Su Qing-sang was also a medical student, so she read through all the lists. Su Qing-sang was stunned when she saw the blood transfusion form and the cost on it. Was Xiang Kaiping typo? She remembered that she was before she could think about it. Dr. Jiang had already said, "Dr. Su, don't worry. Your mother will be fine, and your husband has already paid for the blood transfusion." Su Qing-sang didn't want to ask about that, but she still nodded. Although Dr. Jiang worked in the same hospital as Su Qing-sang, they were usually in different departments and didn't have much contact. However, he was also a wonderful person. He winked at Su Qing-sang. "Speaking of which, you have a really good husband. Your mother came not long after she was sent here. He seems to be quite busy with work, but he's been busy all the time. He is considerate." Su Qing-sang looked at him, a little shy but also a little satisfied. He was obviously praising Hu Jinyao, but she felt happier than if he was praising herself. "He is quite good. You have to cherish him." Dr. Zhang's expression was a little teasing. "Just because he is so attentive to his mother-in-law, you have to treat him better." "I know." Su Qing-sang was a little embarrassed. She put the stack of medical records back in Dr. Zhang's hand. "All right, I'll go back first if there's nothing else." "Okay, you're a doctor too. You know everything you need to know. Take good care of your mother." "I will." The thought that flashed through Su Qing-sang's mind disappeared just like that. It was already late when she returned to the ward. Hu Jinyao was still dealing with work. Seeing her come back, he put down the pen in his hand. "How is it? What did the doctor say?" "Nothing. I just wanted to know the basic situation." She also wanted to take better care of Xiang Kaiping. Hu Jinyao nodded. Su Qing-sang looked at him and stood beside him. Her eyes fell on the computer and the documents in front of him. "If you are really busy, why don't you go home first? I'll be here today. It's okay. If you're not at home, I'll be bored if I go home." Hu Jinyao pulled her to sit on his lap. "You don't have to be so polite with me. I like to be with you." Su Qing-sang nodded and sighed in her heart. "Then what about your shower and change clothes?" "I will go home again tomorrow morning," Hu Jinyao said indifferently. Su Qing-sang nodded and wrapped her arms around Hu Jinyao's waist. "Hu Jinyao, will my mother wake up tomorrow?" "Yes, definitely." "Really?" Su Qing-sang was not as confident as him. "Will my mother really not be paralyzed?" "I asked Dr. Jiang, but he is still worried." "Definitely not. If Lin City can't be cured, we will go to Rong City. If Rong City can't cure her, we will go abroad. There will always be a place that can cure our mother." "Okay." Since he said so, Su Qing-sang could only believe him. She wrapped her arms around Hu Jinyao's hand and gently rubbed her face against his chest. "Hu Jinyao." "Yes, thank you." With him by her side, no matter what difficulties she faced, she felt at ease and at ease. Hu Jinyao wrapped his arms around her waist and looked at the top of her head. "We are husband and wife." Su Qing-sang did not say anything. She was now completely focused on Xiang Kaiping. She only hoped that she would get better soon and wake up soon. That night, Su Qing-sang did not sleep well. She had dreams the whole night. Hu Jinyao did not sleep. He sat by the bed and looked at Su Qing-sang's face. He reached out and held her hand, silently comforting her. His palm was warm. Su Qing-sang felt the warmth of his palm and slowly calmed down. Finally, she fell asleep. The next day, Su Qing-sang woke up very early. She did not sleep well in the first half of the night, but she slept well in the second half of the night. She was in high spirits. Chapter 393. Fortunately, Xiang Kaiping was in good condition. Her vital signs were stable. Hu Jinyao just came out of the bathroom. Seeing Su Qing-sang let out a sigh of relief. He took a few steps forward. "Why didn't you sleep a little longer? I saw that you didn't sleep much last night." "I did. You're the one who didn't sleep much." "I'm used to it." Hu Jinyao squeezed her palm. "I've asked Yang Wenchang to bring breakfast over. You eat a little later. Don't be too tired." I've asked him to find 2 caregivers. If there's anything, let them do it. I'm fine, and I don't need a caregiver for the time being. I want to take care of my mother myself. I don't want you to be too tired. Hua Jinyao didn't agree with her decision. Honey, you have to understand that your mother can't recover in a day or 2. She needs to be taken care of for a long time. You can't be alone all the time. Tigers still need to take naps. You can't make yourself sick just to take care of your mother. Can you? I know. Su Qingsang couldn't refute him. Then I promise you that I'll take care of her today. When she wakes up, I'll see what happens. Okay, as long as she didn't insist on taking care of her himself. Soon, Yang Wenchang had already arrived with breakfast in his hands. But there was only one. What do you want to eat? I'm going home. Hua Jinyao looked at the time. I have a meeting today. I might not be able to come over until the afternoon. It's okay. Su Qingsang knew that he was tired after 2 days. You can go and do your work. I can handle it here. Besides, I'm a staff member of this hospital myself. They'll help. That's good. Hua Jinyao patted her on the shoulder. Call me if you need anything. Okay. Before he left, Su Qingsang stepped forward and hugged him. She quickly let go. She took a step back with a determined look in her eyes. Hua Jinyao was a little moved. If Yang Wenchang hadn't been standing next to him, he would have held the woman in his arms and kissed her. Let's go. He gestured for Yang Wenchang to walk out. After Yang Wenchang turned around, Hua Jinyao leaned over and kissed Su Qingsang on the cheek. Su Qingsang glanced at Yang Wenchang nervously, then gently patted him on the back. However, there was a faint smile on his face. I'll have someone send you lunch. The food in your hospital isn't that good. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded and watched Hua Jinyao walk out. She could still feel the warmth of his lips on her cheek. She blinked her eyes and turned back to sit by the bed. She took out the lunchbox. He looked at Xiang Kaiping, who was still asleep. Mom, look, if you don't wake up, I'll have to eat breakfast alone again. Wake up quickly. When you wake up, you can have breakfast with me. Xiang Kaiping was still lying motionless. Su Qingsang's eyes were a little wet, but she was not in a hurry. He finished his breakfast. She fetched some water to wipe Xiang Kaiping's face and hands. When he was done, the doctor came to check on him. Yesterday, Dr. Jiang was not here. Today, 2 other doctors were here. He was also the one who operated on Xiang Kaiping yesterday. Dr. Su, are you taking care of her here by yourself? Dr. Li looked at Su Qingsang and then at Xiang Kaiping. Your mother's condition is good today. The anesthesia has worn off. She should wake up later. You don't have to worry. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Li. You're welcome. It's just that her waist has been injured before. She needs to be more careful in the future. Otherwise, it might affect her life and actions in the future. I know. I'll be careful. Su Qingsang was also a doctor, so Dr. Li did not say anything more. Su Qingsang saw them off. When she looked up, she saw Su Changhui standing at the door. He was holding a fruit basket in one hand and a women's bag in the other. He stood at the door and seemed to have been there for a while. He wanted to come in just now, but because there was a doctor inside, he did not come in. Su Qingsang's lips were pressed into a straight line. She looked at Su Changhui coldly. She turned around and wanted to enter the ward. Su Changhui wanted to follow, but Su Qingsang raised her hand and was about to close the door. Qingsang. Su Changhui took a step forward and blocked the door with his foot, not letting Su Qingsang close it. Get out. My mother won't want to see you. Qingsang, this is what you want, not what your mother wants. What I want is what my mother wants. Su Qingsang blocked the door with her body and looked resistant. I said, my mother won't want to see you. Qingsang, I'm your father. Su Changhui was a little annoyed by Su Qingsang's attitude. Su Qingsang stood up and looked at Su Changhui in front of her. It's rare that you still remember that you're my father. I thought that in your heart. Only Su Peijian is your daughter. I what? Su Qingsang did not budge at all. Go. I said that my mother won't want to see you. Su Changhui looked at her and took a deep breath. You're not calm now. I won't argue with you. I'm very calm. Su Qingsang looked at him. I'm very calm. That's why I can stand here and talk to you. Otherwise, I should rush to the Su family right now and teach Su Peijian a lesson. I said, I've already taught her a lesson. Yes. You should have slapped her. Su Qingsang nodded. I got it. You can go now. Qing sang. Su Qinghui looked at Su Qing sang and did not want to argue with her. I came here today not only to see your mother, but also to give you this. As he spoke, he raised the bag in his hand. Su Qing sang saw that there was blood on the bag. The blood covered the color of the bag, but she could tell that it was Xiang Caiping's. She reached out and took it. Why is my mother's bag with you? After your mother got into a car accident yesterday, this fell on the road. Peijian picked it up for her, but it fell in her car yesterday. She gave it to me when she got home. Really? Thank her. Su Qing-sang's tone was neither cold nor warm. Su Changhui was not angry. There's a gift from your mother in this bag. I heard that she went to Bo Gu Zhai to buy you that gift. Su Changhui did not know what to feel. He really did not expect that Su Qing-sang and Xiang Caiping could develop such a deep relationship in such a short time. Su Qing-sang did not speak. She took the bag and opened it. There were 2 boxes wrapped in red flannels. They were about the same size. The words Bo Gu Zhai were printed on the packaging. She picked up one of them and opened it. There was a jade Buddha pendant inside. The jade pendant was obviously a good thing. It cannot be bought without hundreds of thousands of yuan. Su Qing-sang looked at the pendant inside and suddenly had an urge to cry. She lowered her head and did not look at Su Qinghui. Chapter 394. Su Qing-sang was touched for a while. Before she had time to look at the other box, she found that Su Changhui had entered the ward. She was so angry that she almost wanted to flare up. However, Xiang Caiping, who was sleeping on the bed, seemed to be waking up. Mom! Su Qing-sang quickly stepped forward, put her bag aside, stood in front of the bed, and reached out to hold Xiang Caiping's hand. Mom, are you awake? On the bed, Xiang Caiping's eyes were moving. She was in pain all over. Hearing her daughter's voice, she opened her eyes with great difficulty. Qing! Xiang Caiping's voice was stuck in her throat after only one word. She had slept for an entire night and lost too much blood. Her body was weak, and her voice was extremely hoarse and unpleasant to hear. Mom, don't say anything yet. Su Qing-sang quickly poured a glass of warm water. She wet a cotton swab and moistened her lips with it. He poured another cup and put the straw in it. He lifted her head and motioned for her to suck through the straw. At the same time, he pressed the bedside bell to call the doctor. Xiang Caiping felt better after drinking some water. She looked at Su Qing-sang, blinked, and finally recognized who the person in front of her was. Before she had finished her water, the doctor came. Xiang Caiping was given a routine checkup and asked a few questions. At last, Dr. Li looked at Su Qing-sang and said, Dr. Su, since your mother is awake, her concussion should be fine. The rest of the body will slowly recover, and it should be fine. Thank you, Dr. Li. Su Qing-sang breathed a sigh of relief. Are you sure there won't be any side effects? I don't think so. Just pay more attention to your waist. All right. I will. Su Qing-sang sent the doctor away and stood in front of the bed again. She looked at Xiang Caiping and said, Mom, the anesthesia has worn off. You might feel a little pain. If you really feel uncomfortable, I'll prescribe some painkillers for you. Xiang Caiping shook her head. She was in pain indeed. Her entire body ached. But now she couldn't care less about the pain. Qing-sang? After drinking the water, Xiang Caiping's throat felt much better. Her voice was not as hoarse as before. Why did you come back? Aren't you in Song City? Mom! Su Qing-sang put the water aside and carefully put her head back on the pillow. You're already like this. How can I not come back? Look at you. Xiang Caiping was a little anxious. She wanted to get up, but Su Qing-sang pressed her shoulder down. Mom, don't be in such a hurry to move. Your lumbar spine is injured. He needed to recover properly during this period of time. You mustn't move around, or you'll have a lingering illness in the future. Xiang Caiping's body did not move, but her eyes were full of anxiety. Child, why did you come back? This job was very important. Hurry back. I'm fine. How could you say that you're fine? Su Qing-sang felt like crying. In the past, he had read the news that some parents chose not to tell their children about their illnesses or surgeries during the college entrance examination so as not to affect their children. At that time, She couldn't understand why there would be such a parent. But now that she had encountered it, she was so touched that she wanted to cry. Mom, work is fine. It was true. I've already asked for leave. Don't worry. I will accompany you. It's all my fault. I've held you back. Xiang Kaiping looked guilty. Mom, what Xiang Kaiping said made Su Qingsang want to cry. She held her hand and said softly, "Don't be like this. You didn't hold me back. I'm so glad I can take care of you." Really? Xiang Kaiping's face was pale. She was still a little conflicted. Su Qingsang held her hand tightly and said, Mom, I haven't been by your side for the past few decades. Don't stop me." Xiang Kaiping didn't object, but there were obvious tears in her eyes. Qingsang, Mom, don't talk. You lost a lot of blood. Your body is weak now. You should take care. Xiang Kaiping nodded hard. The simple movement made her back hurt again. Su Qingsang felt sorry for her and held her hand. Mom, I'm begging you. Don't move. Lie down properly. Xiang Kaiping finally stopped moving, but at that moment, she saw Su Chenghui, who had been standing in the corner of the ward. With just one glance, her expression changed. Why are you here? Su Qingsang also saw Su Chenghui at that moment. Her expression was a little ugly. Dad, can I ask you to leave? Su Chenghui looked a little uncomfortable. He took a step forward, but didn't get close. Kaiping, don't be like this. Get out. I don't want to see you. If she could move, Xiang Kaiping would have chased after Su Chenghui herself. Kaiping, I just want to see you. You've seen me. You can leave. Xiang Kaiping's attitude was too firm and cold. Su Chenghui stood there for a moment, not knowing whether to move forward or retreat. Su Qingsang turned around and took 2 steps forward. Dad, I think it's better for you to leave. Qingsang, you saw it. My mom doesn't want to see you. Moreover, she can't help but get excited when she sees you. If you really want her to recover faster, you should hurry up and leave. Su Chenghui didn't want to leave. He felt very guilty, and besides the guilt, he also blamed himself. Su Peijian's unintentional action had hurt Xiang Kaiping, which he didn't expect. He felt that he should apologize to Xiang Kaiping. Qingsang asked him to leave. Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows and said coldly, Dad, you hurt her. My mom really doesn't want to see you. Su Chenghui sighed. He didn't want to stay. He thought for a moment and said, Then, Kaiping, I'll come to see you tomorrow. No, you don't have to come again. Xiang Kaiping's voice was very cold. I'm afraid that I won't recover if I see you. Su Chenghui didn't know what to say. He wanted to take another look at Xiang Kaiping, but Su Qingsang blocked his view. In the end, he had no choice but to turn around and leave. After he left, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Especially Su Qingsang. No matter what, Su Chenghui was her father. If he really insisted on staying, she might not be able to do anything about it. Mom, are you hungry? Su Qingsang sat down in front of the bed and looked at her with concern. But you have to bear with it. You can't eat anything for now. It had been less than 24 hours since the surgery. She could only get in 4 for now. It's okay. I'm not hungry. She had slept so well that she wouldn't be hungry. Xiang Kaiping reached out to hold Su Qingsang's hand. I'm useless. I wanted to help you, but now not only can I not help you, but I'm also a burden to you. Mom, Su Qingsang didn't like what she said. If you say that again, I'll be angry. Fine, I won't say it anymore. Xiang Kaiping looked around. Where's Jinyao? He went to work. Su Qingsang was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would misunderstand, so she quickly explained. He stayed here all day and night yesterday. While I was in Song City, he was the one running back and forth. He paid for the surgery. Chapter 395. Don't praise him. I'm afraid he'll be too proud. Su Qingsang joked with Xiang Kaiping. You're a good girl, too. Xiang Kaiping smiled. Suddenly, she let out a cry. Mom, what's wrong? Where's my bag? There's something in it. You mean this? Su Qingsang went to get it first and raised the bag in her hand. Yes, this. Xiang Kaiping smiled. Open it. Open it. Su Qingsang had seen it, but she still let out a cry of surprise when she saw the box inside, as if it was the first time she opened it. Do you like it? Xiang Kaiping smiled. I thought about how hard it is for you to work in a place like the hospital every day. I bought a jade Buddha for you to wear. I didn't know. Su Qing already knew, but her eyes were still a little red. She took out the jade Buddha and looked at Xiang Kaiping. Mom, seriously, why are you spending so much money? It's hundreds of thousands. It's nothing. Will my money be yours in the future? Xiang Kaiping held her hand. Put on and show me. Okay. Su Qing didn't refuse. It was a mother's wish, and she couldn't refuse it. He wore the jade Buddha statue around his neck. The jade Buddha statue was green in color and had a warm texture when held in his hand. Thank you, Mom. I like it very much. I'm glad you like it. Xiang Kaiping looked in the bag. There's a bracelet. It's a gift from a boss. See if you can wear it. Mom, I can't wear a bracelet. Su Qing shook her head. I need to have surgery. I can't wear a bracelet. Then keep it. You can wear it in the future. Thank you, Mom. Su Qing put the box away and put the bag aside. Mom, get better soon. You can wear this bracelet when the time comes. Su Qing held Xiang Kaiping's hand as she spoke. Your wrist is very thin and your bones are small. It will look good on you. I'm old. I don't need to think about it. Xiang Kaiping smiled. I just want you to be well now. Nothing else matters. Looking at Su Qing, she thought of the hard work she had in the past few decades and sighed. In fact, at my age, it's not a big deal to die like this. Now that I've acknowledged you, I have no regrets. Really, Mom, you're talking nonsense again. Su Qing held her hand tightly and didn't want to listen to her anymore. You can't say that you have no regrets. You haven't even seen the birth of your grandson, right? Take good care of yourself. I'm still waiting for you to take care of my child. Xiang Kaiping's eyes widened. She seemed to be shocked by this suggestion, but soon she smiled. All right. Okay. That was right. I still want to live a little longer. I still want to see your baby born. I still want to be a grandmother. Yes. Su Qing nodded. She knew that Xiang Kaiping was determined to live on. In fact, many elderly people would feel depressed in their old age and feel that they were a burden to their children. If other elderly people thought that way, she would not allow Xiang Kaiping to think the same way. In fact, she only found out later that Xiang Kaiping looked old, but in fact, she was not even 50 years old. She was still a middle-aged person, not an elderly person at all. Xiang Kaiping didn't know if it was because she thought that she would be able to hold a grandson in the future, but the smile on her face became wider, and she looked much more energetic. Su Qing was relieved. Seeing that the infusion bottle was almost full, she changed it herself. Xiang Kaiping looked at her daughter's neat movements and smiled. Look, it's so good to have a daughter who is a doctor. You don't even need to change the bottle. Mom, everyone can do this. Su Qing said that, but she was still very happy. She really felt good to be able to take care of Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping couldn't eat, and she couldn't move because of the injury on her waist. She took out her phone and read the news to her. The mother and daughter exchanged some hot news, and the atmosphere was really good for a while. However, if there was too much infusion, Xiang Kaiping would still feel sleepy. Not long after, she fell asleep again. Su Qing tucked her in, looked at Xiang Kaiping's face, and thought about what she just said about having a grandson for her. Maybe she could discuss with Hu Jinyao and stop using contraceptives? However, would Hu Jinyao want a child? Su Qing suddenly felt a little uncertain. In fact, Su Qing still wasn't sure if she could be a good mother. She always worried that she wouldn't know how to educate the child, especially when she thought of Su Peijian. Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue always wanted to give the best to Su Peijian. However, Su Peijian was a little spoiled. On the contrary, Su Yusin, who wasn't spoiled by Su Chenghui, was a little protective, but his personality was actually not bad. Thinking of this, she had prepared a gift for Su Yusin. Today was Friday. He would be back from school, and she couldn't send that gift to him now. At noon, Hu Jinyao sent someone to deliver food. When the food was delivered, Xiang Kaiping was still sleeping. Even if she was awake, she couldn't eat. After dinner, Su Qing cleaned up a bit. The care workers and physiotherapists that Hu Jinyao hired also came. Su Qing was a doctor, so she naturally knew what kind of care workers to choose. After asking, one of the care workers with the surname Ning stayed. She was in her 30s and very experienced. She was also very strong and looked very strong. In fact, care workers had to turn patients over from time to time. If they were too thin and weak, they really couldn't do it. As for the physiotherapist, Xiang Kaiping couldn't even get out of bed now. How could she do rehabilitation? She had to wait until she recovered better. Su Qing-sang left the person's phone number and agreed to come when Xiang Kaiping could do rehabilitation. Although the person didn't stay, Su Qing-sang was quite satisfied with Jinyao speed. Su Qing-sang really felt that she couldn't be happier to have a husband by her side, who thought ahead of her in everything. She thought that when this busy period was over and Xiang Kaiping's body was more or less recovered, they would have a child. She believed that Xiang Kaiping wouldn't be the only one who would be very happy. Old Master Hua, who was far away in Rong City, would also be very happy, right? When Su Yusin returned home, he found that the atmosphere was a little strange. He had been at school 5 days a week and wasn't at home very often. Occasionally, he contacted his parents, either on the phone or through WeChat. He didn't even call them often. But if there was anything, someone at home would tell him. Entering the door, Li Qianxue didn't look very good. Not only was it not good, but it was also quite ugly. Su Qingwei didn't look very good either. He sat on the sofa opposite Li Qianxue, with a coffee table between the two of them. Su Peijian sat on the big sofa in the middle. Her eyes were red, as if she had been wronged. Sitting next to her, old Master Li also had a cold face at this time. Chapter 396. Grandfather, Dad, Mom, Sister. Su Yusin took off his coat and went forward to greet them. A servant came up to help him take down his coat and hang it up. Su Yusin stood in front of the coffee table and looked at the situation in front of him. What's wrong? What happened? Li Qianxue didn't speak, and neither did old Master Li. Su Qingwei frowned and didn't say a word. In the end, Su Yusin could only look at Su Peijian, hoping that she would give him an answer. Sister, Yusin, you came back at the right time. Su Peijian was about to cry. Look at Dad. He actually told me to go to America. I don't want to go. To America? Su Yusin glanced at Su Qingwei. Why are you going to the United States? Su Peijian stopped talking. Li Qianxue glared at Su Qingwei. The hatred in her heart was as deep as the ocean, but now her face was cold and filled with anger. Dad, I don't want to go to America. I've already finished my master's degree. Why should I continue to study? Old Master Li sat there without saying a word. Study? Su Yusin glanced at Su Peijian. You still want to study? Yes. That's what Dad said. Su Peijian was furious. He told me to study in the United States for a few more years before coming back. I said I don't want to go. Old Master Li patted Su Peijian's hand and looked at Su Qingwei. Do you want to exile Peijian now? Do you want to give her up? Su Qingwei didn't look happy either. Dad, what are you talking about? I asked Peijian to study because I wanted her to cultivate her character. Cultivate her character? Li Qianxue couldn't stand it anymore. Do you want her daughter to cultivate her character, or do you want to exile her? You know it. I didn't mean that. Even if Su Changhui had that intention, he wouldn't say it out loud. I'm sending her away now for her own good. Or should we wait for Hua Jinyao to deal with her? What right does Hua Jinyao have to punish her? Su Qingwei, you don't have to sound so noble. Your sweetheart is back, and you can't wait to give her your whole heart. What's a daughter worth? Li Qianxue gritted her teeth. Her heart was filled with hatred. Su Changhui didn't treat her well, but he had given her the cold shoulder for so many years. It was her own choice. But now, he couldn't even tolerate her daughter? She used to think that he treated Su Peijian well and thought that he still had a heart for this family. So it was because that woman did not return. Now that that woman was back, he only cared about Xiang Kaiping. How could he care about any of them? She caused Kai. Su Chengwei paused. She caused a car accident. Do you think Wu Jinyao will let it go? Was she the one who caused it? That's what Luo Fu and Madame Song did. What does it have to do with her? If that Madame Luo and Madame Song hadn't wanted to help her vent her anger, if not for her instigation, Madame Luo and Madame Song wouldn't have done so. Why would they want to make things difficult for someone who has nothing to do with them? Li Qianxue stood up abruptly. What? Was she that precious? Couldn't he vent his anger on her? She slapped my daughter in the face. As a father, you don't know how to stand up for your daughter. Instead, you're bullying your daughter and thinking of sending her away? What kind of logic is that? Even if Su Peijian's words and actions were inappropriate, there were hints. But Madame Luo and Madame Song went there on their own. What did it have to do with Su Peijian? Su Changhui didn't want to argue with Li Qianxue about this. I only know that she's an adult. She has to pay for her actions. Pay? What price? Was she the one who hit the person? Was she the one who did it? She didn't kill Boren. Boren died because of her. Why isn't she responsible? Su Chenghui used to like to see Li Qianxue pretend to be Su Peijian, but today he felt that he couldn't say anything. Su Chenghui, don't talk nonsense. It's obvious that you don't like us because that woman has come back. You don't need to say anything else. I won't allow you to send Peijian away. Li Qianxue, be reasonable. Su Chenghui, who's being unreasonable? Enough. Old Master Li's head hurt after listening to them for a long time. He knocked the cane in his hand hard. Li Qianxue and Su Chenghui stopped talking. Old Master Li looked at Li Qianxue first. His eyes were filled with disapproval and blame. Qianxue, you're not a little girl anymore. You're not a little girl anymore. You should control your temper. Don't you know what you can say and what you can't say? Dad, Li Qianxue felt wronged, but she couldn't say a word. And you, Chenghui. Old Master Li looked at Su Chenghui. Chenghui, it's been so many years. I don't think the Li family has done anything wrong to you. Dad, I didn't mean that. Even if Su Chenghui dared to talk back to Li Qianxue, he still respected Old Master Li very much. After all, for so many years, Old Master Li had been leading him in the business world, hand in hand. He was also the one who taught him many things. He could not love Li Qianxue, but he did respect Old Master Li from the bottom of his heart. I know that I forced you to marry Qianxue back then, and you have resentment in your heart. But Chenghui, it's been more than 20 years, and Yusin is about to be 18. No matter how much resentment you have in your heart, seeing that Qianxue gave birth to 2 children for you and has been working for you for so many years without any complaints, your resentment should be gone, right? Su Chenghui didn't speak. He couldn't respond to this. Some hatred and resentment couldn't be eliminated in a short period of time. Old Master Li sighed. I'm old. I can't interfere in your affairs anymore. You said that you're afraid that Hui Jinyao will settle the score with Peijian. I'm willing to go and talk to him. As for Peijian, looking at Su Peijian, Old Master Li said helplessly, there's no need for her to study, but it's fine for her to go to a short-term advanced course. Grandpa, Su Peijian bit her lip. She was actually quite dissatisfied with this arrangement. It's decided. You can all go. Old Master Li waved his hand. I said that I'm old, and I just want to see a happy family. I can't bear to see Peijian leave for a few years. It's fine to go there for a few months. When he met Su Peijian's dissatisfied gaze, his voice became harsher. There is indeed something wrong with your personality. Too arrogant, too willful. It's good that your father wants you to go away for a while. Since Old Master Li had spoken, this matter could only be decided this way. No matter how dissatisfied Su Peijian was, she could only agree to this decision. However, she still couldn't accept it. She stood up and stomped upstairs. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.